Chapter 361, John's Secret and Plan. In the desolate corridors of the Ministry of Magic, a faint blue flame suddenly ignited within a fireplace set into the wall. Cedric was the first to emerge, clad in a sleek black suit that allowed for easy movement, his cufflinks shimmering with yellow-orange gemstones. Following him was Malfoy, his attire a luxurious black velvet suit with a silver snake coiling around his shoulders, complemented by an emerald ring adorning his right little finger. Neville appeared last, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black waistcoat, a sword sheathed in an ornate silver scabbard studded with rubies at his side. As they stepped out, another fireplace flared to life, revealing a man in a white robe, his identity concealed behind a white mask and blonde hair. "You've arrived," he announced, removing his mask to reveal a face familiar from the World Cup, the visage of Johnny Silverhand. Cedric, taking on the mantle of leadership, addressed him, Gold. His gaze lingered on the white mask, a relic of their encounter during the Triwizard Tournament. "So, you're Johnny Silverhand." "Wrong," Jin corrected, a hint of stubble lining his chin as he surveyed the trio. "We all are." The statement left them bewildered. "You mean John is Johnny Silverhand?" Malfoy interjected, disbelief etching his features as he remembered his own aspirations to become Johnny Silverhand's godson, a memory that now seemed to hold a different significance. Jin offered a sympathetic nod. "You've never seen his face, have you?" Malfoy's expression darkened at the realization. Neville, still trying to piece together the revelation, murmured, "If John is Johnny Silverhand, then he's more capable than you imagine," Jin interjected, his voice steady. "He began amassing this immense power back in his second year." "The reason he kept this from you was to protect you, given your youth," Jin explained. "So, Percy and Fleur are in on this secret?" Malfoy struggled with the revelation. "Percy was informed last year," Jin confirmed. "But understand, this secrecy was meant to safeguard you." Cedric, who had remained silent, finally spoke up when Malfoy turned to him for confirmation. "The graveyard," he said, a pained expression crossing his face as he recalled the harrowing memory. Jin quickly shifted the focus. "That concludes the matter of John's secret. Now, it's time to enact John's final plan." The air grew heavy with determination. Malfoy, his resolve hardening, uttered, "Revenge." Without a word, Jin led the way, their path taking them past the Ministry's deserted elevator. Cedric, puzzled, inquired about the absence of the Ministry's staff. "John secured this place for the night, luring Voldemort here," Jin revealed, his eyes glinting with a cold resolve. "So this is about revenge?" Malfoy sought confirmation. As they prepared themselves, Neville gripped Marvolo's sword tighter. Cedric glanced at his wand, and they all touched the star badges on their chests, symbols of their unwavering commitment. Meanwhile, on the 5th floor in Percy's office, Fleur prepared herself, her beauty accentuated by her practical attire and the sapphire necklace around her neck. She touched her star badge, a gesture of solidarity. Percy stood, his voice carrying a weight of seriousness. "Our mission differs from theirs," he reminded Fleur, reflecting on the revelation of John's true identity and the unnecessary complexities it could have spared him from. Together, they readied themselves, united by a common cause and the revelation of John's secret, poised to carry out his final, vengeful plan. Wrong smiled confidently. "However, this feeling is not bad. The final destination will be the Hall of Death. Remember, do not touch the arch," Percy repeatedly urged, his tone laced with seriousness. "That's something even the Ministry of Magic doesn't fully understand. The more mysterious something is, the more potential it has to surprise us," Fleur remarked nonchalantly, waving her hand dismissively. "Let's go, Percy." Despite having developed an aura of authority, Percy found it impossible to act superior in front of his friends. Picking up the cup that lay on the table, he declared with a stern voice, "Then let's proceed." He was aware that the Ministry of Magic was deserted at this hour, eliminating the need for discretion. Together, they took the elevator down to the Department of Mysteries. As the elevator descended, Percy's mind wandered back to a recent conversation with John. "This is all in your hands, Percy," John had said during their meeting at the Club of Stars, where he had shown Percy a vial of deadly black poison. The revelation had filled Percy with anger, despair, and a sense of urgency, prompting him to consider consulting Dumbledore. However, John had ultimately convinced him to abandon that idea. "This is the only way to fulfill our plan," John had insisted, gripping Percy's hand tightly. "You're the only one who can bring my plan to fruition. No one knows the Ministry of Magic better than you do. The Department of Mysteries harbors immense power, and those forbidden areas are our only hope for a resurgence," John had continued, placing a heavy burden on Percy's shoulders. When the cup was handed to him, Percy understood the gravity of his task. He faced a dire choice: fail and witness the death of his companions, or succeed and undo the wrongs that had been committed. Fleur noticed the weight of the world on Percy's shoulders and offered him a reassuring pat. "John trusts you," she said with conviction, "and so do we." "Fleur," Percy responded, his eyes brimming with tears, before nodding with newfound determination. He made a silent vow: "Even if it costs me my life, I will see this plan through." Upon reaching their destination, they found themselves at the end of a dark corridor, facing a closed black door. Opening it, they discovered that the four who had arrived earlier were already making preparations. Percy, noticing the markings on the door, mused, "If Minister Crouch were to find out about this, he'd surely reprimand us. But it's a clever tactic." He then found the door he was looking for, the Hall of Time. Inside, Percy was captivated by the sight of flowing golden sand. It was widely believed that John Wick and Johnny Silverhand harbored a deep hatred for Voldemort, going as far as to send starmen to hunt down Death Eaters and offer substantial rewards for their capture. Dumbledore and Barty Crouch Sr. were among those who shared this belief. However, Percy knew the plan was far more complex than a simple vendetta. It wasn't just about taking a life. The real objective was something far more challenging. The golden sand represented the power of time, and interacting with it could have catastrophic effects on one's physical being. This was why the Ministry of Magic had imposed strict regulations on its use, including the Time Turner, with hundreds of laws designed to prevent misuse. As Percy placed the cup among the sands, he watched as it seemingly absorbed the golden grains without ever filling up. One by one, the hourglasses vanished. Percy couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal towards the Ministry of Magic. As an official, he was torn between his duty and the clandestine actions he was now part of. Meanwhile, Fleur observed a bird caught in a cycle of rapid aging and rebirth, a stark reminder of the relentless passage of time and the irreversible consequences of their actions. Just a door away, in the Hall of Prophecy, 5 students had infiltrated the area, surrounded by towering shelves filled with glowing prophecy orbs. The vast space, reminiscent of a cathedral, was both awe-inspiring and foreboding, hinting at the profound secrets and challenges that lay ahead. In the round room, Harry and his companions navigated cautiously through the dimly lit passageway, flanked on either side by towering shelves. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps against the stone floor. Shadows danced along the walls as they progressed, their wands casting the onmal eye light in the oppressive darkness. As they moved, Harry couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The shelves were crammed with ancient artifacts and mysterious objects, each with its own story, hidden away from the world. He wondered what secrets they held, what magic they contained. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of centuries, and it was as if the very air was charged with a silent, waiting power. The group maintained a tight formation, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. They knew the dangers that lurked in such forgotten places, the remnants of spells and curses that could be triggered by the slightest touch. Their mission was clear, but the path was fraught with peril. Suddenly, a soft whisper seemed to emanate from the depths of the shelves, a barely audible murmur that made the hairs on the back of Harry's neck stand up. He signaled for the others to stop, his hand raised in caution. They listened intently, but the sound did not come again. After a moment of tense silence, they continued on their way, but the sense of unease had grown. It was as if the very walls were watching them, ancient guardians of the secrets they sought to uncover. As they approached the end of the passageway, the room opened up into a vast chamber, the ceiling lost in shadows far above. In the center stood an ancient pedestal, upon which rested an object that seemed to pulse with a light of its own. They had found what they were looking for, But as they stepped forward, they knew that the true challenge was only just beginning. Chapter 362, The Department of Mysteries and Dumbledore's Army. In the depths of the Department of Mysteries, Harry and his friends navigated the labyrinthine corridors, their hearts heavy with apprehension. The location Harry had seen Sirius in his dream was in the 7th row of aisle 90, yet they found themselves in the 53rd row. With a sense of urgency, Harry whispered, "Get your wands ready." His friends, already gripping their wands tightly, nodded, their faces set with determination. They proceeded cautiously, casting wary glances behind them, fearing an ambush. As they moved forward, the numbers on the aisles slowly descended. No, 80, 4th row. No, 80, 5th row. Small yellow labels peeked out from beneath the glass orbs on the shelves. Some orbs pulsed with a mysterious light, while others remained dim and lifeless. Harry strained his ears for any sound, any sign of Sirius, but was met with silence. A dreadful thought crossed his mind. Had Sirius been tortured into silence, or worse, was he already dead? Harry shook his head, trying to dispel the dark thoughts. Hermione's soft voice broke the silence. 97. They had reached the end of the aisle, but it was deserted. Harry's throat felt dry as he said, "He's supposed to be here, but we can't see clearly from this angle." Doubt gnawed at him, but he refused to believe that his dream had led them astray. The thought of breaking into the Ministry of Magic for a mere dream was unbearable. Yet, he needed to prove he was right. Leading the way, Harry navigated through the towering shelves, each step filled with the hope that Sirius would suddenly appear. "He should be around here," Harry muttered, more to himself than to his friends. "Harry?" Hermione's voice was tinged with hesitation. Harry, however, was not ready to face the possibility of being wrong. "It's here somewhere," he insisted stubbornly. They traversed the length of the aisle only to be greeted by dim candlelight and an oppressive silence. No sign of Sirius. Harry's heart sank, but he was not ready to give up. "He might still be here," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Harry," Hermione said gently, seeing his struggle, "I don't think Sirius is here." Harry stopped in his tracks, unable to face his friends. The guilt of dragging them into this situation weighed heavily on him. He had argued with Hermione over a dream before, and now it seemed she was right. The realization that his actions had led them into danger once again was too much to bear. "Harry?" It was Ron's turn to call out to him. "What's wrong?" Harry couldn't bring himself to respond. He felt an overwhelming desire to just disappear, to hide away from the consequences of his actions. But Ron's next words caught his attention. "Did you see this?" Ron pointed to a glass orb on a shelf. Expecting some clue left by Sirius, Harry approached with a flicker of hope. However, it was just an orb, not the clue he had hoped for. Disappointment washed over him, but Ron's next words piqued his curiosity. "Your name is on it." Harry leaned in closer, his curiosity overriding his disappointment. The label bore a date from 16 years ago, alongside the words, "The Dark Lord and Harry Potter." Harry stared, bewildered. Why was his name here? "What is this?" Ron echoed Harry's confusion. "Don't touch it." Hermione's warning was sharp and immediate. Harry hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. "But it has my name on it," he protested. "Don't touch it, Harry," Ginny advised, her voice laced with concern. Despite the warnings, Harry's curiosity won. He reached out, expecting the orb to be cold to the touch. Instead, it was warm, as if bathed in sunlight for hours. Harry longed for something dramatic to happen, something to justify their perilous journey. With that thought, he took the orb into his hands, the others gathering around, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. United in their resolve, Harry and his friends were determined not to let their efforts be in vain, despite their reluctance to see Harry take such a risk. Unbeknownst to them, a figure emerged from the shadows, his voice dripping with sarcasm and ridicule. "Very well, Potter. You are, as you guessed, a true Gryffindor," he sneered. The group slowly turned to face the speaker, only to find themselves surrounded by dark, masked figures. Their wands pointed directly at them. Among these ominous figures stood Lucius Malfoy, his long platinum hair gleaming in the dim light, a look of disdain etched on his handsome face. "Give it to me, Potter," he demanded, extending his hand. Harry clutched the glass ball tighter, his voice firm. "Where's Sirius?" The question was met with laughter from the Death Eaters, their jeers echoing menacingly. Amidst the mockery, a hoarse, mad voice echoed, "The Dark Lord is truly clever." Despite the taunts, Harry's resolve did not waver. "I want to know where Sirius is," he repeated, his demand mimicked mockingly by Bellatrix Lestrange, whose appearance sent a shiver down Ron's spine. Her face, pale and scarred, twisted into a grotesque smile as she stood beside Lucius. Lucius, maintaining his composure, coldly advised Harry to learn the difference between dreams and reality, implying that the visions Harry had seen were merely illusions crafted by the Dark Lord. Harry, undeterred, whispered to Ron, urging him to hold back for the moment. Bellatrix's laughter filled the air once more, her insanity palpable. Harry's heart was heavy with the realization that his actions had not only rendered their mission futile, but had also placed his friends in grave danger. Yet, when Lucius demanded the prophecy, Harry and his friends stood their ground, wands at the ready, prepared for any sudden attack. "Arrogance," Lucius remarked coldly, underestimating their resolve. "Hand over the prophecy, and no one will be harmed." Bellatrix's impulsive move to snatch the prophecy ball prompted Harry to act swiftly, casting a protective shield with a shout of "Protego." The ball nearly slipped from his grasp, but was secured just in time. Lucius, visibly agitated by Bellatrix's recklessness, admonished her, highlighting the importance of the prophecy. Bellatrix, driven to madness by her experiences and Voldemort's dark magic, suggested a cruel plan to capture Ginny. The group instinctively formed a protective circle around her, with Harry declaring that any attack on them would result in the destruction of the prophecy. Despite Bellatrix's madness rendering Harry's threat seemingly inconsequential, he persisted, seeking to understand Voldemort's interest in the prophecy. The mere mention of Voldemort's name caused a momentary pause among the Death Eaters, their attention sharply focused on Harry as he stood defiantly, the prophecy ball in hand, ready to confront whatever came next. Bellatrix's eyes narrowed, her gaze piercing through Harry with a venomous intensity. "How dare you slander him with your vile words?" she hissed, her voice laced with fury. "Stupefy!" Bellatrix screamed, her wand thrust forward as she unleashed a jet of red light towards Harry. The spell shot through the air, a vivid streak of crimson against the dim surroundings, aiming directly at Harry with lethal precision. Harry, quick on his feet, managed to dodge the spell, feeling the heat of the spell as it whizzed past him, narrowly missing his skin. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the air thick with the anticipation of the next move. Harry, realizing the gravity of the situation, knew he had to act fast. Bellatrix was not one to be underestimated, her loyalty to the Dark Lord making her all the more dangerous. As the duel continued, spells and curses flew back and forth, a deadly dance of light and shadow. Harry, fueled by determination and the need to protect his friends, matched Bellatrix's ferocity with his own skill and bravery. The battle raged on, a testament to the enduring struggle between light and darkness. Each spell cast a declaration of their unwavering resolve. Chapter 363, The Hall of Prophecy and the Star Club, Hermione. Harry's shout was cut short as a red spell narrowly missed him. In an instant, Hermione conjured an iron armor curse around her body, causing the spell to ricochet and shatter a nearby prophecy orb. The orb broke open, revealing a holographic image of an old man with a white beard, murmuring prophecies. "Harry now!" Hermione didn't hesitate, her wand slashing through the air as she countered, "Reducto." Simultaneously, 4 voices echoed the same spell, but their targets were not the Death Eaters. Instead, the white beams of destruction aimed at the shelves, causing prophecy orbs to rain down in a chaotic cascade. Harry and his friends made a hasty retreat. "Excellent work," Lucius Malfoy praised Bellatrix, despite the chaos, let out a shrill laugh, narrowly avoiding a falling prophecy orb. As Dumbledore's army members scattered in different directions, Harry noticed the door they had entered through was slightly open. Grabbing Hermione's hand, he dashed inside and swiftly closed it behind them. Hermione quickly secured the door with a spell. However, they soon realized they were isolated from the rest. "They must have taken a wrong turn," Hermione exclaimed, her voice tinged with horror. "Great," Harry muttered under his breath, his frustration evident. They had intended to rescue someone, but now they were cut off by the sounds of pursuit from outside. Meanwhile, Luna and Ginny found themselves cornered. Two Death Eaters blocked their path, their wands pointed menacingly. "It's my fault. I led us the wrong way," Ginny confessed, squeezing Luna's hand in guilt. "Capture them, and Potter will have no choice but to surrender," Lucius commanded, leaving the task to his subordinates as he continued his search for Harry. Facing the imminent threat, Ginny's grip on her wand tightened. "We can fly away," she suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. "What? We can't possibly." Ginny started to protest, but was cut off as Luna wrapped her arms around Ginny's waist and lightly stepped off the ground. To Ginny's astonishment, wings sprouted from Luna's shoes, propelling them into the air just as the Death Eaters launched their spells. "We're going to fly," Luna sang, her voice ethereal amidst the chaos. Ginny, a skilled seeker, quickly adjusted to the sudden flight, her eyes widening in awe at the sight of Luna's brightly shining shoes. As they soared, the small wings beat furiously, stirring the air and sending prophecy orbs tumbling down, narrowly missing the pursuing Death Eaters. Ginny was about to question their escape when she noticed the protective charms Luna wore, which deflected an incoming spell. "What's that?" Ginny inquired, eyeing the wooden and shell amulets around Luna's waist. Luna, dodging another spell at their high altitude, replied with a hint of joy. "John gave me this amulet." Ginny, recognizing the significance of such an amulet from her father's Auror gear, realized they were in dire straits as more Death Eaters joined the chase, making them prime targets. One by one, the amulets shattered under the onslaught. "Lower, Luna. We need to go lower," Ginny urged, aware that Luna lacked her flying prowess. Descending to a safer altitude, they managed to evade the worst of the attacks until an explosion near a high shelf sent them crashing to the ground. The impact was brutal, and the last of Luna's amulets broke, leaving her bracelet bare. As they struggled to their feet, a red spell targeted them. Ginny, quick to react, raised her wand in defense but was still knocked back, her face grazed by debris. Luna, looking at her now useless shoes, saw the wings flicker and disintegrate into light dust, signaling the end of their flight. After their initial attempt to escape had failed, Ginny and Luna found themselves cornered. Ginny, with a sense of urgency, shouted, "Luna!" just as a masked Death Eater materialized in front of her. In a swift motion, Ginny's wand was disarmed with a sharp Expelliarmus. Luna, attempting to retaliate, was abruptly knocked to the ground by the Death Eater before her, leaving her with a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. As Luna struggled to rise, the scene took an unexpected turn. The Death Eater attacking her suddenly became immobilized, his frantic kicks ceasing as his wand was snapped in half, and he was forcefully slammed to the ground, his fate uncertain. "Hello, Neville," Luna greeted the newcomer with a weak smile. Neville, with a grimace, disposed of the Death Eater, his hand betraying a lack of hygiene. Ginny's assailant, noticing Neville, prepared to attack, but was swiftly incapacitated by a spell from Malfoy, who then casually inquired if Ginny was all right. Ginny, taken aback, could hardly believe that Malfoy had come to her rescue. Neville helped Luna to her feet and returned her wand, advising them to leave the dangerous area. Ginny, retrieving her wand, questioned their presence, skeptical of their coincidental arrival at the Ministry of Magic. Malfoy's response was dismissive, indicating that their reasons were none of her concern. Luna, looking past Neville, inquired about someone named John, which momentarily silenced Neville. Before the conversation could continue, another Death Eater approached, raising his wand to attack. Neville, with remarkable agility, deflected the spell with his sword and swiftly subdued the attacker, demonstrating a level of prowess that left Ginny in awe. The strength Neville displayed was something the Gryffindor house had never recognized in him before. As the situation escalated, Neville, wielding both wand and sword, made it clear that Luna and Ginny could not be involved in what was to come. Before he could elaborate, Malfoy incapacitated another Death Eater, and the two men quickly departed, leaving Luna and Ginny behind in astonishment. Ginny, still processing the events, wondered aloud about the strength of the Quunxing Club, a group she was evidently unfamiliar with. Meanwhile, Ron was in a dire situation of his own, being pursued by Death Eaters who seemed to toy with him, bombarding him with prophecy balls that inflicted pain upon impact. Despite his attempts to retaliate, Ron found himself outmatched and in agony under the Cruciatus curse cast by a Death Eater named Not. Lucius Malfoy, overseeing the torment, suggested sparing Ron's life for the potential exchange of a prophecy ball, his disdain for the Weasley family evident. As Ron suffered, the chaotic scene was further intensified by the arrival of Bellatrix Lestrange, her madness palpable. Lucius then proposed splitting their forces to capture the remaining targets, indicating a broader plan at play. The children who had managed to escape were now the prime targets. "Remember, don't kill them before we get the prophecy orb," Lucius Malfoy instructed with a cold, calculating tone. As he prepared to leave, he cast a disdainful glance at Ron Weasley, a group of children playing at being heroes. "You're not even close to being a match for us," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Bellatrix Lestrange, ever impatient, urged him, "Lucius, come on!" With that, Lucius departed, leaving a chilling silence in his wake. Theodore Nott then grabbed Ron, intending to take him away. As Ron was dragged along, a deep sense of injustice welled up inside him. They were nearing a row of elevated roads when Nott suddenly stopped. He turned his head slightly, noticing a pair of eyes peering through the shelves at them. As Nott moved, the eyes followed, both parties picking up speed. Just as they reached the end of the shelf, Nott whipped around and aimed his wand in the direction of the mysterious observer. "Stupefy!" he shouted, casting the spell. To his astonishment, the spell seemed to pass right through the figure without any effect. Not only did the person remain unharmed, but they also raised their wand in response, catching Nott off guard. "Stupefy!" This time, it was Nott who was struck by the spell, causing him to collapse to the ground. Ron could only stare in shock as the Fide Gure quickly disappeared from sight. Meanwhile, Harry Potter found himself facing his own set of challenges. This unexpected turn of events left the Death Eaters momentarily disoriented. The children, underestimated and dismissed, were proving to be more resilient and resourceful than anyone had anticipated. Amidst the chaos and danger, the bonds of friendship and courage were their greatest weapons against the dark forces arrayed against them. Chapter 364, The Hall of Time and the Death Eaters. Lucius Malfoy led a group of Death Eaters in search of Harry, or more precisely, the prophecy orb he held. Upon re-entering the Hall of Time, Harry and Hermione heard noises outside, which filled them with anxiety for their friend's safety. "What should we do?" Hermione asked, struggling to maintain her composure after their recent encounters. Harry, usually the more level-headed of the two despite his occasional lapses into recklessness, had a plan. "We can't just wait here for them to find us. We need to get out through that door." He understood the stakes well. As long as he remained free, the Death Eaters would hesitate to harm his friends. Moving as silently as possible, they passed a shining glass bell jar, inside which little birds chirped, miraculously not reverting to eggshells. Harry briefly wondered at this anomaly, but quickly dismissed it as they continued their escape. Approaching the circular foyer's exit, they were startled by the sound of the door closing. "Alahomora!" a gruff voice commanded, and the door swung open. Reacting quickly, Harry pulled Hermione under a table for cover. Peering out, they saw the hem of Death Eater robes approaching. Both gripping their wands tightly, they prepared for confrontation. "They probably ran straight to the hall," the gruff voice speculated. "Check under the table," another, more cautious voice suggested. As the Death Eaters bent down, Harry and Hermione acted swiftly. "Stupefy!" they shouted in unison, sending 2 red beams of light shooting out. One beam struck a Death Eater, who crashed into a grand pendulum clock, both tumbling to the ground. The other Death Eater, more agile, dodged Hermione's spell, retaliated with a curse aimed at her. In a desperate move, Harry tackled the Death Eater's legs, bringing him down. As they struggled on the floor, Hermione, seizing the moment, disarmed both with an Expelliarmus and urged Harry to restrain the Death Eater. Switching tactics, Harry held the Death Eater tightly, allowing Hermione to cast a sleeping curse on him. The spell took immediate effect, rendering the Death Eater unconscious. "Nice job, Hermione," Harry praised, nursing a crooked nose from the scuffle. Hermione quickly repaired his injury with an Episki charm, eliciting a relieved sigh from Harry as his nose clicked back into place. As they made for the exit, a red spell shot towards Hermione, but was deflected by a protective spell. Realizing another Death Eater had recovered, Harry retaliated with a stoopfy, but missed, causing destruction in the Hall of Time instead. The ensuing chaos saw objects continuously breaking and repairing themselves. Joining forces, Harry and Hermione managed to corner the Death Eater near a bell jar. Harry's spell finally connected, sending the Death Eater crashing into the jar and rendering him incapacitated. Their immediate threat neutralized, Harry and Hermione hurried towards the exit, keenly aware that their battle was far from over. The Hall of Time, with its shattered and self-repairing artifacts, stood as a testament to their desperate struggle for survival against the dark forces arrayed against them. Immersed in a surreal bubble, the head of the Death Eater before them began to shrink rapidly under their astonished gaze. "It's time," Hermione whispered in awe. The Death Eater stirred, his head now that of an infant's, his mind seemingly regressed to match. He flailed his arms, striking out at the air around him in confusion. Harry was poised to attack, but Hermione grasped his hand, urging him not to harm what was now essentially a baby. Their moment of hesitation was shattered by distant shouts and footsteps echoing from beyond the Hall of Prophecy. Realizing their cover was blown, Harry grabbed Hermione's hand, and they dashed towards the black door at the hall's far end. Two Death Eaters burst into the Hall of Time just in time to catch a glimpse of Harry and Hermione's retreating backs. The pair turned a corner into a small, dark, cluttered of Vice, barely managing to close the door behind them before it was forced open again. "Impedimenta!" came the simultaneous cry from their pursuers. Harry was thrown back by the force of the spell, while Hermione, to her surprise, remained unscathed. The iron armor curse she was under had been activated, leaving the Death Eaters momentarily stunned. One of the Death Eaters, regaining his composure, raised his wand menacingly. "Avada!" he began, but was cut off as Harry, with a desperate yell, interrupted him. The spell was never completed. Instead, the Death Eater turned his wand triumphantly towards Hermione. But before he could cast another spell, his throat seemed to seize up, silenced mid-cry. Harry quickly cast a petrification spell, rendering him immobile. The other Death Eater, undeterred, fired a red spell at Hermione. She attempted to block it, but was knocked off balance. Yet, the iron armor charm protected her once more. "How many iron armor curses do you have?" the confused Death Eater demanded, having not seen Hermione cast a spell. "It's none of your business," Hermione retorted, rubbing her sore elbow. "Petrificus totalis," Harry countered without hesitation, and the second Death Eater fell, immobilized atop his companion. "You silenced him just now?" Harry asked, puzzled by the turn of events. "I don't know. I didn't do anything," Hermione replied, pulling a wooden amulet from her waistband. "I only have one left." "What's this?" Harry inquired as they moved towards the circular foyer. "John gave it to me. It's an amulet," Hermione explained, her thoughts drifting to John and his recovery from illness. "Listen, Hermione, we need someone to sound the alarm," Harry said earnestly. "They're targeting me. I need you." Understanding the gravity of their situation, Hermione felt a surge of responsibility. "Take this, Harry," she said, handing him the last amulet. As they stepped into the circular foyer, they were joined by Luna and Ginny, emerging from another door, followed by a bewildered Ron. "We're all here. Let's run," Harry exclaimed, his face lighting up with relief. But as they searched for the correct door, all the identifying marks vanished, leaving them momentarily disoriented. Suddenly, a door opposite them swung open, and Death Eaters poured out. "Here!" A barrage of red spells flew towards them, forcing Harry and his friends to flee headlong into another room, the Brain Hall, with no chance to retaliate. "Seal all the doors," Harry commanded, casting a charm on the door they had just passed through. The others quickly followed suit. As they approached the fifth door, Luna stepped forward to cast a spell, but was struck by a red spell, causing her to collapse. "Luna!" Ginny cried out in alarm. 5 Death Eaters burst in, with Lucius Malfoy leading the charge. He fired a spell at Ginny, who narrowly dodged, tumbling to the ground. "Catch Potter!" Lucius bellowed, and the chase intensified. Amidst the chaos, Ron was struck by a curse, sending him flying forward. Hermione grimaced at the sight of the repulsive brains floating in the green liquid. With a determined flick of her wand, she cried out, "Let the brains fly!" "Hermione, no!" Harry's warning came too late. The brains, ensnared by tentacles that even the Death Eaters dared not approach, soared out of the tank. Hermione narrowly dodged one as they made a dash for the only door that wasn't locked. Just as they were about to reach it, two streaks of red light shot towards them from behind. Harry's shield charm activated just in time, but Hermione wasn't as lucky. She was struck and fell to the ground. "Hermione!" Harry reached out to help her, but the urgency of their escape forced him to continue towards the door, clutching the prophecy orb tightly. He entered what was known as the Hall of Death. Harry stumbled and tumbled down several levels until he landed in a pit, gasping for air. His heart pounded against his chest, threatening to burst. He managed to climb onto a ledge within the pit, only to be greeted by the sight of Death Eaters who had also made their way in. They had already subdued his friends, and Lucius Malfoy, catching his breath, addressed him with a veneer of grace. "Potter, it's over for you," Lucius drawled, elongating his words. "Hand over the prophecy orb, and do it now." Harry, defiant even in the face of danger, shouted back, "Release my friends, and I'll give it to you." His demand was met with derisive laughter from the Death Eaters. Even Lucius couldn't contain a chuckle. "Do you really think you're in any position to negotiate?" he sneered. "Has Dumbledore's teaching left you incapable of understanding your situation? Such ignorance." The tension in the air thickened as Harry weighed his limited options, the prophecy orb in his hand and his friend's safety hanging in the balance. Chapter 365, The Hall of Death and the Order of the Phoenix. Lucius Malfoy's gaze was fixed on Harry, who was visibly struggling. With a casual flick of his finger, one of the Death Eaters shoved Ron forward. Bellatrix Lestrange, unable to contain her excitement, shouted, "Let me do it!" She rushed forward, her wand bent menacingly, and pointed it at Ron. "Crucio!" she exclaimed. Ron's screams filled the air as he fell to the ground, writhing in agony. "No, Ron!" Harry's voice was filled with a primal rage. "Let him go, or I'll destroy the prophecy." He clutched the prophecy orb tightly, threatening to smash it on the ground. Lucius, with a calculated look, signaled Bellatrix to halt her torture. He slowly approached Harry, extending his hand. "Give me the prophecy orb, Potter." "Don't give it to him." Ginny's voice was choked, her own wand pressed against her throat by another Death Eater. Bellatrix, in a fit of madness, yanked Ginny's hair, cackling wildly. Hermione, her eyes filled with determination, silently urged Harry not to surrender, despite the wand prodding her neck. Ron, despite his pain, managed to crawl a bit closer. "Don't give it to him, mate." Lucius, visibly irritated, kicked Ron in the face, causing blood to splatter. "Shut up, Weasley," he spat, delivering a few more kicks, each one filled with disdain. Ron curled up, each kick feeling like it was shattering his insides. "You should learn to be smart, Potter," Lucius taunted, turning his attention back to Harry. "Opposing the Dark Lord will only bring you misery. Aren't your parents the perfect example?" At the mention of his parents, Harry's grip on the prophecy orb tightened. "Don't come any closer," he yelled, defiance in his voice. Lucius paused, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "There's a better outcome here," he coaxed. "Hand over the prophecy orb, or watch your friends suffer." As if to emphasize his point, Bellatrix threw Ginny to the ground. Harry's attention was momentarily diverted, and Lucius seized the opportunity to lunge for the orb. A struggle ensued between the two. Suddenly, two doors high above swung open. 5 figures descended into the room, catching the Death Eaters off guard. Sirius Black, agile and swift, landed among them, his wand casting a red light that struck the Death Eater holding Hermione. Nymphadora Tonks hit Lucius with a sleeping curse, forcing him to release Harry. Harry leaped off the platform, recognizing the newcomers as members of the Order of the Phoenix. Remus Lupin engaged the Death Eaters near Ron, while Kingsley Shacklebolt confronted Bellatrix, allowing Ginny to roll to safety. Alastor Moody single-handedly battled 3 Death Eaters, giving Luna Lovegood a chance to escape. The Death Eater holding her was knocked away by the horned Snorkack in her pocket. "Are you all right, kid?" Moody asked Luna, his expression one of distaste. Luna nodded, holding up the Snorkack, now the size of a fist. Moody, puzzled by her actions, deflected an incoming spell with his wand and used a bench to block another. "Get out of here, kid," he barked. Harry helped Ron off the platform, just as a silver light blasted a hole in the ground. "It's all right, Harry," Sirius said, transforming from his animagus form of a black dog back into a human. Snape told me you might be in trouble. Sirius, Harry exclaimed, relief and surprise in his voice. Sirius grabbed Harry by the collar, pulling him to safety while blocking a spell from Lucius. Moody, narrowly avoiding a curse, shouted, "Stop chatting, Sirius." Tonks, clutching her head, exclaimed, "Is it just me, or do they have reinforcements?" She fired a red light towards the Death Eaters, who returned fire. Moody, limping on one leg, confirmed, "It's not just you. They've brought more Death Eaters." Harry peeked out, searching for Hermione and the others, but Moody quickly pulled him back, his magical eye spinning. "Don't stick your head out, boy," Moody warned, as they prepared to face the renewed assault. In the midst of the chaos, Sirius Black Spot, Ed Bellatrix Lestrange, and taken aback, exclaimed, "Why is she in this state?" Noticing Kingsley Shacklebolt being overwhelmed by enemies, Sirius immediately sprang into action. Harry Potter attempted to follow, but Ron Weasley held him back, urging caution. On the opposite side of the elevated platform, Remus Lupin found himself encircled by several Death Eaters, the situation growing increasingly perilous. Hermione Granger, wand at the ready, attempted to intervene, but the Death Eaters' relentless assault made it difficult. Just as Lucius Malfoy was about to strike Kingsley, Sirius intervened, repelling the attack. "Be careful," Lupin shouted across the chaos. Heeding the warning, Harry cast a sleeping curse at a nearby Death Eater poised to attack, neutralizing the threat. "Excellent," Sirius exclaimed, momentarily mistaking Harry for James Potter in the heat of battle. "Nice job, James," he said, before correcting himself and turning his attention back to Lucius Malfoy, who was now struggling to fend off their combined assault. Hermione, meanwhile, assisted Lupin in dispatching a Death Eater. "Well done, Miss Granger," Lupin praised, to which Hermione responded with a grateful smile. "Thank you for the compliment, Professor Lupin." Just as the tide seemed to be turning in their favor, Nymphadora Tonks let out a scream. She had been struck by a Death Eater and fell onto the steps. Lupin's momentary distraction cost him dearly, as he was sent flying by an enemy spell. Alastor Moody found himself besieged by 3 Death Eaters, the battle taking a dire turn. Luna Lovegood was pursued by Death Eaters, while Ginny Weasley used a crushing curse to fend off an attacker. The Death Eaters, however, were relentless. Ron rushed to his sister's aid, engaging in a fierce struggle with the Death Eaters, his face swelling from the blows. Kingsley, forced to retreat by Bellatrix's ferocity, approached Sirius, gasping, "These are the elite survivors of the Star Apprentice's hunt. They're formidable opponents." Sirius, ever decisive, suggested they switch targets, believing Kingsley to be better suited to take on Lucius Malfoy while he held off Bellatrix. As the two switched opponents, Harry found himself uncertain of where to lend his support. Bellatrix, upon seeing Sirius, cackled maniacally, "Sirius, my dear cousin." Sirius, disgusted, retorted, "I don't want a cousin like you," and engaged her in combat. Amidst the ongoing battle, the door above swung open, and several spells were cast at members of the Order of the Phoenix. A Death Eater named Drogon, upon Lucius's command, made a beeline for the prophecy orb. Despite Drogon's aggressive attacks, Harry found them surprisingly easy to counter, leading him to wonder about the true strength behind them. The battle escalated as more Death Eaters joined the fray, overwhelming Tonks and targeting Moody. Hermione, Luna, and Ginny regrouped, managing to hold their own against 2 Death Eaters. Ron continued his brawl, determined not to let his opponent escape despite his injuries. In a moment of calm amidst the chaos, Luna, seemingly conversing with the Thestral perched on her shoulder, hinted at the arrival of unexpected allies. Hermione, puzzled by Luna's cryptic message, and Ginny, contemplating the possibility of Draco Malfoy opposing his father, were abruptly pulled back into the fray as a killing curse narrowly missed Luna, who vanished only to reappear behind the Death Eater, casting Levicorpus and suspending him in the air. The Thestral, proudly posing on Luna's shoulder, seemed to bask in the admiration as Tonks, joining them, couldn't help but praise, "Very amazing little guy." "Thank you for the compliment," Luna replied, her eyes shining with a mix of gratitude and determination as they continued to battle against the dark forces arrayed against them. Luna exclaimed, just as a spell whizzed past from behind, causing the horned Snorkack to emit an unexpected sound, which, oddly enough, redirected her back to Ginny. Harry's unease grew. Something was amiss. A Death Eater had boasted of his strength, claiming he could easily parry attacks and engage fiercely in combat. Yet, despite his bravado, he found himself outmatched, struggling to gain the upper hand, and was gradually being overpowered. Suddenly, a spell shot out from an unseen assailant, striking Harry's arm. The impact forced him to release his grip, and the prophecy orb he had been holding flew out of his hand. Desperately, he managed to catch the orb with his other hand, securing it once again. Turning to identify his attacker, Harry was met with the sight of platinum hair, which for a moment made him think he was facing Lucius Malfoy. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was Draco Malfoy playing with the prophecy orb. "Give it to me, Malfoy," Harry demanded, eager to reclaim the orb. Draco glanced at Harry with a casual yet distinctly malicious smile, and with a flick of his fingers, he let the orb go. A crisp, echoing sound filled the air as the orb shattered. The narrative had taken a sharp turn, with Draco's actions adding a layer of tension. Harry's determination to retrieve the prophecy orb was evident, but Draco's smug demeanor and the subsequent destruction of the orb added complexity to the unfolding events. The dynamics between Harry and Draco were charged with their history of rivalry, making this encounter a pivotal moment in their ongoing conflict. Chapter 366, The Order of the Phoenix, the Death Eaters, and the Society of Stars. Why are you here? Lucius Malfoy was momentarily taken aback, his surprise quickly turning into elation. Draco, protect the prophecy orb. His words trailed off as he watched, horrified, the orb slipping from his son's grasp and shattering on the ground. The orb was broken. Except for Harry, Lucius was the only one who witnessed this scene. From the remnants of the shattered prophecy orb, a pair of milky white figures, their eyes magnified many times over, rose into the air. Draco, seemingly indifferent to the chaos he had caused, kicked the pieces down the stone steps and descended slowly, his gaze lingering on his father before turning to Harry with a defiant sneer. "Potter, you're not the savior." Suddenly, a figure burst through the black door, landing heavily in front of Luna, Hermione, and the others. Wand in his left hand and a sword in his right. For a moment, Hermione thought it was John, but it was Neville, his presence as imposing as a fierce lion, cutting through the Death Eater's attacks with ease. The sword in his hand flashed silver, and in an instant, 2 Death Eaters fell, their blood mingling with the silver light. A fog began to rise around the 4 individuals on the high platform, halting their attacks as they watched warily. Near the arch, a figure started to materialize from the fog. "Impossible!" Kingsley Shacklebolt exclaimed. "That was the door to death, a place for executions. How could someone emerge from it?" Bellatrix Lestrange launched an attack on the figure, but with each strike, the figure simply split into another. "Mirage," came a low groan from all directions, the sound ethereal. "That's fake." Suddenly, a silver steed burst through, sending a Death Eater flying. "It's a Patronus!" One Death Eater exclaimed in surprise, noting its unusual offensive capability. "It's a member of the Star Society," Harry realized, seeing Draco Malfoy disappear into the mist and another figure dart past. The Star Society was here, but why? The Death Eaters, survivors of many battles, launched counterattacks amidst the weird mist that produced illusions, trapping them. Neville and Malfoy appeared sporadically, turning the tide of the battle. "Don't panic, you fools!" Bellatrix screamed, casting the Cruciatus Curse on a Death Eater who had succumbed to panic, watching him collapse in agony. "Kill them all!" Lucius, his mind reeling, could only think of his son. "Draco, why are you here?" The fear that Voldemort would be furious over the broken prophecy orb chilled him to the bone. "No, don't let him hurt Draco," Lucius thought, a cold fear gripping his heart. Amidst the fog, the Order of the Phoenix seized the opportunity to counterattack. Though unsure of the unfolding events, they recognized a chance to escape. Sirius Black, transforming into a black dog, cast a spell at Bellatrix before rushing to find his godson. Harry, navigating through the mist, collided with Ron. "Did you see that?" he asked, shaking Ron, who looked bewildered with a face swollen like a pig's. "What?" Ron managed to ask. "Draco Malfoy. He smashed the prophecy orb," Harry explained. "Draco Malfoy?" Ron echoed in surprise. "He can't be here." Confused about Malfoy's presence, Harry knew they needed to regroup with their friends. They stumbled through the fog, eventually finding Ginny and the others. "Did you see Neville is here?" Hermione exclaimed upon seeing them. "Neville?" Harry was puzzled. "I thought it was Draco Malfoy." Both parties were stunned. "They are all here," a voice, ethereal as if singing, confirmed. Ginny nodded. "Luna and I encountered them in another room." Ron then recalled the eyes he had seen, and a green light flew out from. In the midst of chaos, Harry quickly ducked and said, "Let's go find Sirius." As if summoned, the large black dog emerged from the shadows, transforming into Sirius, who immediately grasped Harry's shoulder, urging, "Take them away quickly." "But what about the Order of the Phoenix?" Harry inquired, concern lacing his voice. Sirius responded with a grave tone, "Harry, you need to leave now." Harry felt a surge of frustration. He wished Sirius would stop treating him like a child. Before he could voice his thoughts, Moody's commanding shout, "Get down!" cut through the air. Moody appeared, brandishing his wand. A beam of light shot from it, striking an attacker and sending Moody to the ground. His magical eye, dislodged in the commotion, rolled towards Harry's feet. Harry, realizing the importance of the magical eye, picked it up and handed it to Ron, just as a voice echoed in his head, causing confusion. "Who's talking?" he muttered, puzzled. "No one's talking, Harry," Hermione replied, sensing Harry's distress. Ignoring her, Harry's gaze sharpened, and he dashed towards the source of the voice, with Sirius, concerned for his godson, close behind. Hermione and Ron, meanwhile, turned their attention to aiding the fallen Moody. Suddenly, a Death Eater emerged, only to be swiftly dispatched by a well-aimed kick and a fireball. The mysterious rescuer, after a brief exchange, vanished into the mist, leaving Hermione to wonder about his identity. Harry, driven by the mysterious voice, narrowly avoided a spell and continued his pursuit. "Harry, come back!" Sirius called after him, but it was too late. A chilling laugh pierced the air, and Harry felt a warm splash on his face. He froze, staring at the fresh wound on Sirius's shoulder. Bellatrix Lestrange emerged from the mist, her eyes gleaming with madness. "Little baby Potter," she taunted, clearly delighted by her own cruelty. Enraged, Harry attempted to retaliate, but Sirius held him back. The battle intensified as Bellatrix and Sirius exchanged spells, their duel a blur of color and light. Harry, eager to help, found himself targeted by two more Death Eaters, only to be shielded by Tonks and Kingsley. Tonks, her hair now a fiery red, declared, "Your opponent is us," while Kingsley, with a reassuring grip on Harry's shoulder, advised, "Leave this to us." The fog seemed to conspire with the combatants, parting to reveal Lucius Malfoy and another Death Eater named Drogon. Sirius, seizing the initiative, called for a change in tactics. Kingsley and Tonks, understanding immediately, unleashed a combined spell that merged with Sirius's, creating a formidable barrier against their foes. Despite his bravery, Sirius's time in Azkaban had taken its toll, and he struggled to maintain his strength. "Moonface, take Harry away," he gasped. "Padfoot, you have to hold on." Lupin emerged from the mist, pulling Harry away despite his protests. As they retreated, Harry's scar seared with pain, drawing a cry from him. Lupin, concerned, inquired about his well-being, but their conversation was cut short when they collided with an unexpected figure. Before they could identify the newcomer, the mist thickened, obscuring everything. Guided by instinct and the mysterious voice, Harry navigated through the fog, miraculously avoiding Death Eaters. Yet, the vastness of the battlefield left him feeling disoriented, wondering why he couldn't seem to find his way out. The fog before him finally dissipated. Harry had hoped to catch a glimpse of Sirius, or perhaps another familiar face, but instead, his gaze was drawn to a towering platform. Atop it, a massive archway stood, its curtains fluttering as if caressed by an invisible breeze. A voice, ethereal and barely audible, seemed to emanate from the direction of the archway. Drawn by curiosity and an inexplicable sense of urgency, Harry approached it with cautious steps. As he neared, the voice grew clearer, though it still carried the weight of a distant echo. It was a sound that seemed to resonate not just around him, but within him as well, tugging at the very edges of his soul. The archway, he realized, was no ordinary structure. Its presence was both ominous and mesmerizing, compelling him forward even as a part of him urged caution. Harry paused at the foot of the platform, his eyes fixed on the gently swaying curtains. Hay moved as if alive, yet no wind could be felt. The voice, now a whisper that only he could hear, beckoned him closer still. It was a moment suspended in time, a choice that felt both inevitable and impossible. With a deep breath, Harry steeled himself against the unknown. The mysteries of the archway, the source of the voice, and the fluttering curtains without a breeze, all of it called to him, promising answers, or perhaps only more questions. But Harry knew that standing still was not an option. Whatever lay beyond the archway, whatever secrets it held, he was determined to face them head-on. Chapter 367. John and Harry. Daphne's eyes fluttered open, unsure of when she had succumbed to sleep. Perhaps the weight of sadness, or the day's tumultuous events had finally taken their toll. She found herself in the Star Club, where the faint sound of John's voice seemed to linger. Her attention was drawn to a soft thud on the table. A bottle had been placed there. Curious, she approached and picked it up, observing the crimson liquid swirling inside. As the starlight from the dome intensified, Daphne extended her hand, allowing the celestial light to coalesce into a small bottle of water in her palm. She recalled John's whispered instructions from days past. When two reds come out, you need to mix them together. Gripping the bottles firmly, she opened the water gall bottle and carefully poured some of the scented blood into the other. The two liquids mingled, creating a whirlpool effect that solidified and dispersed. The mixture's scorching heat peeled a layer of skin from Daphne's slender fingers, yet she did not release her hold. Through the crystal-clear bottle, the blood transformed, burning like a flame before gradually condensing into the shape of a magnificent bird. A somber mood had enveloped Hogwarts, with even the ghosts seemingly affected by a pervasive grief. The usually visible specters were nowhere to be found, their absence marking a stark contrast to their typical behavior. The candles of Slytherin House remained lit, their bearers wandering the corridors in a silent vigil, mourning their fallen king. In death, the barriers of house rivalry seemed to dissolve. Gryffindors set aside their prejudices, remembering the bravery that had once inspired them. Hufflepuffs reminisced about the boy they occasionally encountered in the kitchens, while house elves sang songs in his honor. Ravenclaws lamented the loss of his proud demeanor and the brilliance of his wit. At the entrance, Snape stood with a somber expression, joined by Professor McGonagall, who approached with a hesitant air. The foyer was adorned with wreaths, a testament to the collective mourning. Snape, however, was preoccupied with another matter. "Dumbledore is already aware. He's on his way there," Snape informed her calmly. Professor McGonagall understood the gravity of the situation, her concern for Harry evident. "Aren't his friends coming?" she inquired, worried about the well-being of John Wick's companions. Snape's face, partially obscured by his hair, betrayed no emotion as he replied, "They remain in that room." The existence of the Star Club, much like the Room of Requirement, was no longer a secret, accepted as part of Hogwarts' many mysteries. Perhaps, in years to come, a daring young wizard would stumble upon it and uncover the legacy of the Star Society. Firenze, the centaur divination professor, emerged with a heavy heart, his confidence in his astrological readings shaken. This turn of events was unexpected, a reminder that even the most skilled can err. Professor McGonagall, with a sigh, suggested, "Let's lift the curfew today, in honor of the last day." The students, who should have departed from Hogwarts, had chosen to stay. For one day, the curfew would be relaxed. "I believe the other administrators will agree," she added, glancing towards the foyer where Filch was deep in thought, cradling Mrs. Norris. The cat was unusually calm, her tail gently brushing against Filch's arm as he carried her to his office. In the absence of the Weasley twins' mischief, Filch's office was tidier, the chains and shackles he meticulously maintained hanging in their place. Upon opening two boxes on his table, he found a pleasant surprise. "It's great. He also sent you a cat food gift package and my new clothes," Filch remarked to Mrs. Norris, appreciating the thoughtful gesture from the only student who had ever shown kindness to Hogwarts' most disliked caretaker. With a sense of newfound determination, Filch gently set Mrs. Norris down, meticulously preparing her a bowl of cat food. Clutching the box containing the tuxedo, a hot wave of exhaustion washed over him. As a squib, his existence within the walls of a magical school was a constant reminder of what he could never be. He harbored resentment towards the ghosts and the magic-wielding students, secretly wishing to inflict upon them some measure of the pain he felt. The faint hope that perhaps, just maybe, he could awaken to magic within these walls had been his crutch. Accustomed to the disdain from students, his only solace was the company of his cat. Yet, everything changed with the arrival of a particular student. This student, who found himself in trouble and detention from the outset, showed no fear of Filch. He treated Mrs. Norris with kindness, sharing his snacks with the cat that was universally despised. For Christmas, the only present Filch received was a box from this student, filled with his favorite ice cream flavor. When confronted with Filch's squib status, the student showed no contempt, nor did he broadcast it. He never mocked Filch's attempts to exceed his limitations, understanding that a squib could never match a wizard in magic. Yet, he gave Filch something invaluable, the sensation of wielding magic through a pair of enchanted shoes that allowed a squib to outrun a wizard. This student, despite his rule-breaking tendencies, brought a unique thrill to Filch's mundane life. Their nocturnal encounters, a silent agreement of mutual acknowledgement, became moments Filch cherished. But now, with the student gone, the prospect of future Christmases without thoughtful gifts or Mrs. Norris's fur losing its luster seemed bleak. The question of whether to continue battling the bad students weighed heavily on him. Overwhelmed by fatigue, Filch gazed at the manacles he once dreamt of using for punishment, now seeing them as pointless. In a fit of rage, he tore them down, their clattering fall echoing his resignation. Meanwhile, in the deserted great hall, only John lay among the flowers, his presence deterring anyone from disturbing the so-called Slytherin king's rest. Daphne, clutching a vial of blood-red potion, approached John with tears streaming down her face. Gently caressing his cheek, she whispered a reminder of their pact. As she administered the potion, 2 owls, one black and one white, perched beside John, silent guardians in his moment of need. Daphne stepped back, her hands clasped in prayer, beseeching John to remember their agreement and return to them. The potion ignited a fierce reaction within John, spreading like wildfire through his body, an inferno that threatened to consume everything in its path. In the Hall of Death, Harry was drawn to the mysterious arch, his scar throbbing with a pain that hinted at Voldemort's presence. As he reached out to touch the veil, Sirius's urgent call and forceful intervention pulled him back from the brink. Sirius, bloodied yet determined, managed to drag Harry to safety, only to be struck down by Bellatrix's curse. His laughter was cut short, a smile frozen on his face as he fell, leaving Harry to witness the tragic end of his godfather, his plea echoing in the sudden silence. In a moment filled with horror, Harry reached out in a desperate attempt to save him, but it was too late. Sirius's body, in a graceful yet tragic arc, seemed to move in slow motion to Harry's eyes as he fell backward into the tattered curtain draped over the archway. His face, once handsome in his youth, now bore the marks of hardship and age, making him appear thin and haggard. A mix of fear and surprise was etched on his face, yet as his eyes met Harry's, there was a fleeting glimpse of relief, as if in his final moments, he mistook Harry for James. "James, where's your mother's on?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Suddenly, the curtain behind him flickered, as if caught by invisible flames, and an unseen force struck Sirius on his left rib with such violence that it sent him flying more than 10 meters away. The scene unfolded with a surreal quality, as if time itself had slowed down to mark the gravity of the loss Harry was about to face. Chapter 368, John, Voldemort, and Dumbledore. Hermione was frantically searching for Harry amidst the chaos. Moody, having just recovered from a brief unconsciousness, returned to the battlefield. He laid a firm hand on Ron's shoulder, gesturing towards a safer area. "Go over there. You need to get out," he urged. Ron, however, stood his ground. "No, I can't leave." "Harry's still here," he declared, his determination reflecting the true spirit of Gryffindor. Moody was about to respond when his attention was diverted by the approaching Death Eaters. The fog, while impairing their vision, also provided them with a tactical advantage. Ron and Hermione shared a determined look before disappearing into the mist to find Harry. Ginny, not wanting to be left behind, followed suit. After a short distance, Ginny collided with someone. She was about to draw her wand when a familiar, comforting voice stopped her. "I need you by my side," it said. Ginny looked up, astonished. "Professor Dumbledore," she exclaimed. A Death Eater, blinded by the fog, stumbled into Dumbledore. Recognizing him, the Death Eater turned to flee without a second thought. Dumbledore, with a flick of his wand, effortlessly subdued the Death Eater. His prowess left Ginny in awe. Moody, spotting Dumbledore, felt a surge of fighting spirit. Dumbledore, with his wand at the ready, seemed to see through the fog, pinpointing and subduing Death Eaters with terrifying efficiency. Ginny's excitement was palpable as she and Luna watched Dumbledore's display of power. The fog seemed no obstacle to him as he systematically neutralized the Death Eaters. The battlefield was quickly turning in their favor. Tonks lay unconscious, and Kingsley was barely holding on. Bellatrix, in her frenzy, was casting spells at Sirius, who was in his animagus form, all the while hurling curses. Upon noticing Dumbledore, Lucius Malfoy, who was about to attack Kingsley, retreated immediately. His departure prompted his followers to do the same, though not all were quick enough to escape Kingsley's counterattack. Bellatrix, after casting a couple more spells, noticed Dumbledore's presence. Her madness, fueled by the thrill of battle, turned into fear, and she fled. As the fog began to lift, a heart-wrenching scream pierced the air. Dumbledore quickly subdued the remaining Death Eaters and turned towards the source of the scream. On the high platform, Harry watched in despair as Sirius was about to be consumed by the veil. In a miraculous twist, Sirius was flung back from the arch, screaming. Harry was momentarily frozen, his emotions a whirlwind of confusion and relief. Sirius, nursing his old injuries, struggled in the shadows, his life saved by a fortuitous kick. "Harry, come back!" Sirius managed to yell, despite his pain. Harry, fueled by rage and fear for his godfather's life, pursued Bellatrix alone. Sirius, unable to chase after him due to his injuries and the lingering effects of a spell, could only watch. "Moonface, stop him!" he shouted desperately. Lupin rushed to intervene as soon as the fog cleared, while Dumbledore prepared to cast a spell at Bellatrix, Voldemort's formidable lieutenant. She deflected the spell and retaliated with one of her own, aiming it at Kingsley. Meanwhile, Lucius scrambled, rolling towards the door at the top of the room. After the fog of battle dissipated, a few Death Eaters remained, necessitating Dumbledore's intervention to apprehend them before he could search for Harry. Lupin was tasked with driving them out, a job that seemed manageable given the circumstances. The Order of the Phoenix had suffered significant injuries in the skirmish. Even the legendary Auror, Moody, had been cursed multiple times, rendering him incapacitated on 2 occasions. Tonks lay unconscious, and Kingsley was wounded. Sirius, injured and exhausted, was curled up on the ledge, pounding the ground in frustration as he attempted to pull himself to his feet. After ensuring the scene was under control, with Kingsley left in charge, Dumbledore set off to find Harry. The magic bloodline is activated. You have gained the blessings of Phoenix traits, Nirvana, Immortality, Fire Mastery, and Longevity. Nirvana, unleash the fire of Nirvana to achieve Immortality, increased resistance, making you resilient to most curses. Fire Mastery, enhances the potency of fire-based magic. Longevity, significantly extends lifespan. Some risks are only understood through action. John, for instance, was uncertain whether his gamble would lead to death or rebirth. As the sun set, he made a daring, unprecedented decision. He ended his own life. He wagered on whether the existence of the magical system was tied to his physical body, his soul, or his consciousness. Thus, he cast a spell of his own creation, Return of the Soul, extracting his soul and concealing it within the Star Club. His body's death was timed with the sunset, and his soul ascended to the stars, granting him the ability to traverse the netherworld. The force that had bound his body to Hogwarts relented, and he was drawn away. His curiosity about the afterlife piqued. He had scoured the entire Hogwarts library for any texts on the subject, including the archway rumored to connect to the underworld. When John found himself in the Hall of Death, it confirmed his suspicions. He had been there before, or rather, he had forgotten everything about it. His journey through death erased those memories. His soul, reborn in flames, passed through the gates of death. Upon regaining life, he emerged as a phoenix chick, growing from an embryo to adulthood. The rebirth was a lengthy, indistinct process, filled with experiences from that other world, though the memories remained elusive. "James," he muttered, "where are you and your mother?" John had just returned from the dead, shoving aside anyone in his path. The sensation under his feet felt oddly familiar, followed by a shout that he recognized as Harry's. Realizing Harry was at the Ministry of Magic, he made his way out, a force attempting to halt his progress but recoiling upon contact with the nirvana flame enveloping John's body. "I think we'll see each other again," John said, smiling to no one in particular as he stepped through the archway. "Harry, wait for me." Sirius, after much effort, managed to stand. Kingsley had healed his wounds, and Tonks had regained consciousness. Concerned for Harry, Hermione and Ron hurried after him. Once the fog cleared, a semblance of calm returned. "Sirius, behind you," Tonks said, her voice quivering. Sirius froze, then slowly turned to face the source of her alarm. "It seems we meet again," a familiar voice said. John stood before them, his body enveloped in flames that gradually revealed his unscathed skin. Naked, he rubbed his neck and remarked, "This sensation is truly remarkable." The group stared in disbelief as the fog of disappearance enveloped John once more. When it lifted, 6 figures surrounded him. John retrieved a small bag from Jin, from which clothes flew out and dressed him automatically. He raised his right hand, and Fleur approached, her expression a mix of awe and confusion. Approaching with a solemn expression, Malfoy extended a silver ring and carefully placed it on John's finger. To his left, he held the wand that Cedric had passed to him. Malfoy's face was a mix of emotions as he firmly shook John's right hand, struggling to hold back tears that threatened to spill. "You never told me you were Johnny Silverhand," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with a mix of surprise and admiration. John shrugged nonchalantly, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Well, I couldn't exactly spill the beans, could I? After all, I'm your godfather, aren't I?" Malfoy's expression soured at the reminder, his voice rising in protest. "I never agreed to that." John raised an eyebrow, his response laced with a mix of humor and seriousness. "And do you really think your disagreement would have made any difference if I hadn't refused the role?" The air was thick with unspoken words and emotions, yet beneath the surface, banter, a genuine joy was evident in their eyes. It was clear. John was back. Percy, holding a golden cup, broke the momentary silence with a question. "What now?" John's gaze shifted to the stunned Sirius and the captured Death Eaters scattered around the arena. With a casual demeanor, he replied, "We continue with our plan, of course." He then turned to Sirius, a smile playing on his lips. "Surprised? I've returned from the dead." Indeed, the prodigal son, the bright star of Hogwarts, had returned, much to the astonishment and relief of his friends. Meanwhile, Harry, fueled by an unknown reservoir of strength and courage, pursued Bellatrix with relentless determination. Their chase led them from the Department of Mysteries to the grandeur of the Ministry of Magic's Great Hall. Upon receiving the news of John Wick's supposed demise, Voldemort felt a momentary sense of relief wash over him. With John Wick dead, he believed he had one less formidable adversary to contend with. Little did he know, the tides were about to turn in a way he could never have anticipated. Chapter 369. Who Are You? Harry pursued Bellatrix from the Hall of Death to the Hall of the Brains and finally to the entrance hall. Her maniacal laughter reverberated through the hallways, creating an eerie echo. As the rotunda spun disorientingly, Harry struggled to identify the correct exit. "Where's the way out?" he asked in desperation. Suddenly, the door behind him swung open, revealing the corridor that led to the elevator. Without hesitation, Harry dashed towards it. He caught a glimpse of Bellatrix entering an elevator, mockingly waving at him. Harry hurried to another elevator, frantically pressing the call button. When the elevator arrived, he rushed inside and pressed the button to ascend. Upon reaching the Department of Magic's main hall, Harry squeezed through the elevator gate before it fully opened. Bellatrix's laughter grew even more deranged as Harry continued his pursuit. She turned and cast a spell at Harry, who narrowly dodged it by taking cover behind the Magic Brothers fountain. The spell missed him and struck the golden door across the hall. Realizing Bellatrix had stopped running, Harry crouched behind the statue, listening intently. Come out, little Harry," Bellatrix taunted in a chilling, childlike voice. "What are you chasing after? Is it a game of hide-and-seek?" Fueled by rage over his godfather's near demise at Bellatrix's hands, Harry's anger propelled him forward. He emerged from his hiding spot, wand aimed at Bellatrix, catching her off guard. "Crucio!" Two voices shouted simultaneously. Bellatrix cried out as the spell hit her, but Harry also collapsed in pain. "You need to harbor true malice in your heart, Potter," a disdainful voice drawled. It was Lucius Malfoy. Harry had forgotten about him in his rush. Pain enveloped Harry's body, causing him to twitch uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Bellatrix quickly recovered. Her harsh laughter filled the air, igniting Harry's desire to end her. "You are too naive, Potter. Your ignorance will cost you your life," Bellatrix taunted, her skin resembling tree bark in its grotesqueness. "Hand over the prophecy orb now." Harry, with revenge burning in his eyes, retorted, "Then you'll have to kill me, because the prophecy orb is gone." Lucius's expression flickered with panic. He slapped Harry, shouting, "Shut up!" Blood trickled from the corner of Harry's mouth, but he sneered, "He knows. Your dear old master Voldemort knows it's gone. He'll be displeased with all of you, won't he?" "What? What do you mean?" Bellatrix, driven to madness, shoved Lucius aside and grabbed Harry by the neck, her long nails digging into his skin. "He saw it too," Harry gasped, glancing at Lucius. "He saw who destroyed the prophecy orb." Bellatrix's gaze shifted to Lucius, suspicion and anger flashing in her eyes. Lucius, realizing the gravity of the situation, hastily said, "He's lying, as he always does." Harry attempted to argue, but the suffocating grip and the searing pain from his scar rendered him speechless, tears streaming down his face. "Lies!" Bellatrix screamed, her grip tightening. In a desperate struggle, Harry's hand found his wand. With all his might, he thrust it at Bellatrix. "Damn it!" she screamed, releasing Harry as blood streamed down her face. Gasping for air, Harry coughed violently, his vision slowly returning. Lucius moved to restrain Harry, but a red light struck him down from behind. It was Bellatrix, her face covered in blood, looking like a ghastly apparition. "He is mine, as the master has commanded," she shrieked. "You're insane," Lucius yelled. Seizing the moment, Harry crawled away. Bellatrix, seemingly lost in her madness, cried out to the empty air, "Master, I did my best. Please don't punish me." "Enough with your babbling," Harry shouted, his vision blurred by pain, yet determined to confront the madness that stood before him. From his scar, Harry felt an icy chill that seemed to seep into his very soul. "He can't hear you talking here," he whispered to himself, only to be interrupted by a cold, high-pitched voice that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Really, Potter?" Harry's eyes snapped open to see a tall, thin figure shrouded in a black hood. The face that stared back at him was horribly pale and haggard, resembling a snake, with slender red pupils that sent shivers down his spine. Voldemort stood before him, his wand pointed directly at Harry. Frozen in place, Harry could only stare in horror. Lucius Malfoy, trembling with fear, scrambled on the ground to Voldemort's feet. "Master, it was him! He destroyed the prophecy orb," Lucius said, barely stopping himself from kissing Voldemort's feet in a desperate show of loyalty. Voldemort's cold, snake-like gaze shifted to Harry. "So you smashed my prophecy orb?" he asked, his voice dripping with malice. In that moment, Voldemort seemed to peer into Harry's mind, gleaning much from his unguarded thoughts. Glancing down at Lucius with disdain, Voldemort kicked him aside. Lucius's fear intensified. He knew the truth, that it was Draco, his own son, who had broken the prophecy orb. The realization filled him with dread. Voldemort, however, showed a rare moment of patience towards Bellatrix Lestrange. "Bella, he didn't lie. I saw the truth in his mind," Voldemort said softly, addressing her frantic apologies with a dismissive wave. "But master, here he is, down there," Bellatrix insisted, though Voldemort paid her no mind and turned his attention back to Harry, wand still aimed at him. "I don't want to waste time with idle chatter on this day of triumph," Voldemort declared. The man who had kept the Death Eaters at bay was dead, and with a swift motion he cast the deadly spell. "Avada Kedavra!" A green light flashed towards Harry, but at the last moment, a golden wizard statue sprang to life, leaping in front of Harry with its arms spread wide, shielding him from the lethal curse. The spell grazed the statue's chest, its powerful magic thwarted. Voldemort, momentarily taken aback by the impressive transfiguration, scanned the room and bellowed, "Dumbledore!" Harry's heart raced as he saw Dumbledore emerge from behind the golden door. Voldemort's laughter echoed through the room, but Harry sensed fear beneath the Dark Lord's facade. Hermione and Ron, having followed Harry, cried out in alarm upon seeing the peril he was in. "Harry!" they shouted. "Ron, Hermione!" Harry replied, relief flooding through him at the sight of his friends. With Dumbledore's arrival, he felt a surge of hope. Ginny and Luna also appeared, their eyes wide with awe at the sight of Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard of their time. Voldemort, however, remained focused on Dumbledore, his expression one of curiosity mixed with malice. "How do you feel?" he asked, his tone mocking. Dumbledore remained silent, prompting Voldemort to repeat his question louder, seeking to unsettle the legendary wizard. "That man is dead, the one who thwarted my plans time and again, that Hogwarts student." Voldemort trailed off, watching Dumbledore's expression closely before revealing, "John Wick." The revelation stunned everyone. "That can't be true, can it, Professor Dumbledore?" Hermione asked, disbelief and hope mingling in her voice. After a moment of heavy silence, Dumbledore finally spoke, addressing Voldemort directly. "Tom, you killed him." Voldemort's laughter filled the room as he pointed his wand at Dumbledore, accusing him. "It's your distrust that killed him." Hermione recoiled in horror, her voice barely a whisper. "That's not true." Voldemort relished their shock and despair. "It's true, little girl," he taunted, his red tongue flicking across his lips. "I poisoned that invincible man with the most vile and agonizing poison. His excellence was undeniable, and his death has brought me immense pleasure." Pretending to ponder, Voldemort added cruelly, "I imagine he begged for mercy on his knees." The sunset was awash with his screams, each word slicing through Hermione's heart like a knife. She struggled for breath, clutching her chest in despair. The thought of her good friend, John, dead, was like being poisoned in the most cruel and agonizing way. Visions of John collapsing, black blood spewing from his mouth, haunted her, and tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Harry, too, felt a pang of discomfort at the news of John's death. However, seeing Luna's calm demeanor, he couldn't help but express his confusion. "Why aren't you sad?" he asked, puzzled. Luna blinked, her voice steady and confident. "John said he's fine," she replied, suggesting that somehow John would return even from the clutches of death. In a moment fueled by grief and rage, Voldemort launched an attack. "Avada Kedavra," he hissed, the deadly spell aimed with precision. But Dumbledore, ever the formidable opponent, spun around, his robe billowing dramatically. He vanished from the path of the green light, only to reappear behind Voldemort. With a swift motion of his wand, Dumbledore animated the statues in the fountain. The witch statue charged at Bellatrix and Lucius, while Lupin, having narrowly escaped, encountered Drogon. They clashed in battle. Voldemort, finding himself under attack from a centaur, vanished and reappeared by the pool. He fired a green light at Dumbledore, which was intercepted by a statue of an elf. The golden wizard statue shielded Harry and the others, but they were vastly outnumbered. Voldemort, with a gesture that required no wand, sent the wizard statue flying with a blast of ancient magic, exposing Harry and his friends to danger. Voldemort unleashed a fierce green lightning towards them. It was too late for any of them to react, and even Lupin couldn't reach them in time. Suddenly, a white light shot through the golden gate, colliding with the green lightning. At the point of impact, a terrifying explosion radiated outward, sending everyone flying. Alarks crackled in the air. Ashamed and disoriented, Harry and the others looked up to see who had intervened. A figure stood there, clad in a luxurious robe and wearing a silver mask. Voldemort's reaction was one of sheer terror. "Who are you?" he screamed, as if he had seen a ghost. The mysterious arrival of this masked figure, capable of thwarting Voldemort's attack with such power, left everyone in awe and confusion. The battle had taken an unexpected turn, and hope flickered in the hearts of Harry and his friends, even in the midst of despair. Chapter 370. I, the Fire Dragon with the Silver Mask. At that moment, every eye in the room widened in astonishment. Even Dumbledore couldn't hide his surprise. The intense confrontation that had been likened to a battle of the century, with forces clashing as subtly yet fiercely as a needle against bark, came to a temporary halt. All attention shifted to the newcomer. Among them, 6 wore white masks and cloaks, but it was the one in the silver mask, donned in a dark green robe, who stood out, exuding an unmistakable air of superiority. The stars emblazoned on their chests sparkled brilliantly, drawing everyone's curiosity to one burning question: who is this person? Voldemort's gaze was particularly fixed on the mysterious figure. He was convinced that this man, the one who had destroyed his Horcruxes and led a relentless pursuit against the Death Eaters, was dead. The poison, imbued with curses and dark intentions, was lethal enough to claim even Dumbledore's life, let alone a mere student. The assurance of his death had been confirmed by the very agent Voldemort had sent. It was inconceivable to him that anyone could survive such a fate. Panic, an emotion Voldemort seldom felt even in Dumbledore's presence, flickered in his eyes. He tried to reassure himself that this must be an impostor. Harry, observing Voldemort's agitation, was puzzled. Didn't Voldemort recognize Johnny Silverhand? Who am I? The figure in the silver mask paused, his voice carrying a playful scold with a smile. A hint of mischief danced in his eyes beneath the mask as he surveyed those awaiting his answer. Above the Ministry of Magic, two hawks cried out, adding to the mystery of the moment. Taking a step forward, wand in hand, the silver-masked figure passed Harry without breaking eye contact. "Who am I?" he repeated, his smile broadening. "I am an apprentice and a pioneer." With a flourish of his wand, a bright white light transformed into an electrified whip, lashing across the hall floor, binding the golden wizard statue and hurling it towards Voldemort. Voldemort, quick to react, raised his wand, conjuring a silver shield to block the attack. He then turned the statue into a cannonball, launching it back at the silver-masked figure. "I am a seeker, and I am also one who breaks taboos." The figure raised his hand, now covered in silver, and with a wandless spell, halted the statue's flight. The statue cracked and shattered into hundreds of pieces, which he then directed at Voldemort. Seizing the moment, Dumbledore acted, silently chanting and waving his wand. Voldemort, caught off guard, was bombarded by the statue fragments. But the Dark Lord's defenses were formidable. His silver shield absorbed the impact, and with a mighty effort, he broke free, soaring into the air. A distant thunderclap echoed from above, drawing Voldemort's gaze upwards to the gathering dark clouds. "I am the Summoner of Thunder and the Ancient Dragon Whisperer." The silver-masked figure's wand sliced through the air, calling forth a massive thunderbolt, accompanied by fierce lightning, striking the ground. Voldemort countered with his wand, his robe billowing as he conjured a ball of flames in his left hand, transforming it into a giant fire serpent that danced with the thunder and lightning. Dumbledore, not to be outdone, manipulated the water from a nearby pool, sending it surging towards Voldemort, enveloping him in a watery prison. "I am the master who created the stars and the alchemist who seeks the truth." The silver-masked figure concentrated a ball of white light, the size of a basketball, at the tip of his staff. With a forward step, he hurled it towards the water prison, shattering Voldemort's temporary confinement. Voldemort's complexion paled as he hastily erected a brick wall from the ground, only for it to be reduced to dust by the white light. "I have my followers." With a snap of his fingers, the silver-masked figure unleashed an invisible wave, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in this epic confrontation. The buildings around Voldemort shattered, their debris transforming into snarling puppies under the command of a raised wand. Enraged, Voldemort waved his wand, disintegrating the puppies with a protective circle of magic. Dumbledore, seizing the moment, cast a sleeping spell, which Voldemort narrowly avoided. "They call me Your Excellency, the Great Good Man," declared the figure behind the silver mask, orchestrating the battle with precise wand movements. The puppies, now merged into a formidable large dog, charged at Voldemort. Overwhelmed, Voldemort unleashed a piercing, soul-chilling scream, shattering the illusion of the dog. The sound wave was so intense that Harry and the others clutched their heads in agony, while the glass windows of the Ministry of Magic exploded into fragments. Bellatrix, eager to join the fray, was stopped cold by the silver-masked figure's gaze. Her body began to petrify, starting with her left hand. "I possess deadly eyes and scales that thrive in flames," the figure intoned. As Voldemort deflected an attack from Dumbledore, he launched a curse at the silver-masked figure, who vanished and reappeared behind Voldemort, firing a red spell that Voldemort barely dodged. Dumbledore, with a flick of his wand, sent a whip-like flame towards Voldemort, who summoned a silver shield to protect himself. "I am both destruction and rebirth," the figure proclaimed, disappearing once more. From the pool beneath the statue, a wand emerged, releasing a venomous snake that lunged at Dumbledore. With a swift motion, Dumbledore made the serpent vanish, turning to face Voldemort with a determined glare. Voldemort, realizing his opportunity was slipping away, prepared to flee. However, the sound of gems shattering halted him. The silver-masked figure, now holding a sword in one hand and a wand in the other, declared, "I bear the destiny of prophecy and a name that stands apart from this world." As Voldemort raised his wand, the shattered glass levitated and formed a barrier behind him. Dumbledore, muttering under his breath, conjured a protective silver armor spell. The shards flew towards Dumbledore and the silver-masked figure, who remained unfazed. "I am a fire dragon," the figure announced, igniting the sword with flames that enveloped the blade. Speaking in ancient, ethereal syllables, the figure transformed, revealing dragon-like features. "Dragon blood courses through my veins. My claws rend all before me. My fangs claim lives. My fire scorches flesh, and my venom seeps into the bone." The figure's body expanded, wings tearing free from its back. "I envelop all in my wings, consume stars, and devour shadows." As the figure grew, it became a towering inferno, the flames reaching the dome's height and creating a vortex of fire. Within the flames, a pair of vertical pupils opened, melting the approaching shards and unleashing a terrifying blaze. As if a sun had been ignited, the intense heat evaporated all moisture. Dumbledore watched in awe, while Voldemort, protected by a silver shield, found the ground beneath him turning to magma. Harry and the others, though not the target of the dragon's breath, stood petrified near the Golden Gate, witnessing the awe-inspiring transformation and the overwhelming power of the Dragon King. The terrifyingly high temperature shocked everyone present. The smell of singed hair filled the air, leaving them unable to fathom the intensity of the heat at the flame's core. The dragon's breath lasted for an agonizing 13 seconds, each second stretching out as if they were trapped in hell itself. As the flames dissipated, Voldemort emerged from within, unscathed. A flicker of disappointment crossed the dragon's immense eyes, but it vanished almost instantly. After all, defeating the Dark Lord was never going to be an easy feat. The creature's body began to shrink, morphing back into its original form. This time, however, its face was unmasked. Holding a staff in his left hand and a sword in his right, the figure stood with an air of divine majesty. His vertical pupils set him apart from Voldemort's serpentine gaze. John, with a casual blow to extinguish the flame on his sword, offered a smile. "Of course, if you prefer, you can address me by my name, John Wick." The Ministry of Magic's hall had nearly been obliterated under the dragon's fiery assault, and Voldemort's attire bore the marks of flames, hastily extinguished by his own hands. His gaze fixed in John's direction, filled with disbelief. "You are still alive?" Even Voldemort, the infamous Dark Lord, was taken aback by such a revelation. Dumbledore, too, stared at the youthful face before him. Not long ago, he had received news of John's death from Snape. A death confirmed by a potions master was not easily dismissed as a falsehood. The question hung in the air, unspoken yet palpable. How had John returned from the dead? The room was thick with tension and disbelief, as allies and adversaries alike awaited an explanation. The return of John Wick, presumed dead, promised to unravel mysteries and perhaps alter the course of their conflict in ways none could have anticipated. Chapter 371, I Laughed in the Face of Death. Can a person be resurrected from the dead? The answer is yes. Voldemort himself is a testament to this, having created 6 Horcruxes to ensure his immortality. Unless all the Horcruxes are destroyed, he cannot be truly killed. But what about John? The poison Voldemort used on him had no known antidote, a poison so lethal, Voldemort had even considered using it on Dumbledore. Even with a Horcrux, regaining a physical body in a short period would be impossible, as evidenced by Voldemort's own decade-long absence. The logic was unfathomable. How could someone dead return to life? At this moment, Voldemort found the concept difficult to accept. His own resurrection had been a painstaking process, yet here was a student, albeit an influential one, defying the natural order with inexplicable power. As Voldemort's gaze fixed on John, even Dumbledore seemed momentarily insignificant. The reactions around them varied. Harry was a mix of shock and bewilderment, Hermione was doubly surprised, Luna took it as if it were expected, Bellatrix was immobilized. Lucius rushed to demonstrate his loyalty to Voldemort. Drogon, now separated from Lupin, bore new injuries. Sirius had discovered an exit through the revolving hallway, and the members of the Order of Stars, alongside the Order of the Phoenix, unmasked to reveal their youthful faces. John, with a raised eyebrow, addressed Voldemort. "It seems the situation is quite clear, Tom." Voldemort, surrounded by the combined forces of the Order of Stars, the Order of the Phoenix, and the formidable Dumbledore, found himself in a quandary. Yet he laughed. "You do have talent, John Wick," he acknowledged in his cold, high-pitched voice, "but perhaps you're overestimating your capabilities." "Do you believe the Order of the Phoenix alone can defeat me?" Voldemort sneered. "Your forces are trapped in the Department of Mysteries." Feigning surprise, John retorted, "And you think you stand a chance? You seek my life?" Voldemort's voice pierced the air. "Even in death, I shall return." Dumbledore, keeping his theories about John's miraculous survival to himself, responded calmly, "Merely taking your life would hardly be satisfactory." He looked at John with approval, pleased to have him as an ally. "I am Voldemort," the Dark Lord proclaimed defiantly. "I will not perish here." With that, he launched a killing curse at Dumbledore, who nimbly dodged and countered with a spell of his own. Voldemort then turned his attention to John, hoping to exploit a perceived weakness. "I can achieve what you cannot, Tom," John stated coolly, his sword deflecting an incoming curse. Dumbledore joined the fray, his staff's tip alight with a tiny flame, attempting to ensnare Voldemort as one would a fish. Despite being unable to apparate, Voldemort took to the air. Two owls, one black and one white, swooped down, their talons grazing his robes. Enraged, Voldemort aimed a curse at the white owl, only for a silver light to interrupt his spellcasting from below. John, sword in hand, soared upwards, his wand casting a bolt of lightning at Voldemort, sending him plummeting. A flash of silver halted his descent, but John was relentless. "You're out of your depth, a coward, Tom," he declared from above. Voldemort managed to neutralize the impact, but as Lucius moved to assist, Dumbledore's flames caught him, tossing him aside. As Voldemort attempted another curse, a green light missed John and vanished into the clouds. John stood, sword gleaming, a testament to his defiance and strength against the dark forces arrayed before him. With a swift and graceful motion, the sharp blade gleamed with a silver light as Voldemort, quick to react, cast the iron armor curse to deflect the attack. Raising his hand, he invoked ancient magic, summoning a gust of wind that swept John off his feet, disrupting his balance. As Voldemort raised his wand, poised to unleash the deadly curse, Dumbledore intervened with a spell that caused the ground beneath them to collapse, forcing Voldemort to redirect his focus to defense. In a strategic move, Dumbledore pulled a witch statue in front of him, narrowly evading the death curse. Regaining his footing, John's sword, the silver wick, ignited with a fierce blaze. "Break through the thorns," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. Voldemort, with a flick of his robe, summoned a horde of snakes that lunged at John. The sword's fire sliced through the venomous creatures, filling the hall with the acrid smell of burning flesh. "Master, let me assist you." Lucius Malfoy, having freed himself from his restraints, launched a spell at Dumbledore. Without so much as a backward glance, Dumbledore commanded a house elf statue to intercept the spell, effectively capturing Lucius. Lucius's cries went ignored by John, who seemed to be biding his time, his attacks slowing as if he were conserving his strength. As Dumbledore pressed on against Voldemort, John strategically positioned himself at the edge of the battlefield, occasionally launching spells that Voldemort easily parried. Harry Potter, observing from a distance, realized he was powerless to intervene in such a high-stakes battle. The realization was frustrating, especially seeing John appear actively engaging in the fight. Hermione Granger, too preoccupied with concern for her friend's safety, barely noticed Harry's distress. "Who is that?" Harry muttered, noticing a blonde-haired man eyeing him intently, as if assessing his value. The arrival of Sirius Black momentarily distracted Harry. "Are you all right, Sirius?" he asked, concerned. "I'm fine," Sirius replied with a strained smile, nursing what appeared to be a broken rib. Watching the battle unfold, Sirius expressed disbelief at the sight of a student holding their own in such a dangerous confrontation. "Why hasn't Voldemort fled?" Sirius pondered aloud. Harry theorized, "The power of supremacy. It prevents apparition. I saw it in the cemetery." Ron Weasley, overhearing the conversation, couldn't contain his excitement. This could be our chance to defeat Voldemort once and for all. However, Remus Lupin felt a sense of foreboding. He recognized John as Johnny Silverhand, a name that carried implications Lupin found unsettling. As Dumbledore and Voldemort clashed, John suddenly withdrew from the fray, signaling to his allies, "It's time to prepare." In the Great Hall of the Ministry of Magic, the fireplaces erupted, casting ominous shadows on the walls. From the flames, 10 beams of light shot towards Dumbledore, heralding the arrival of the Death Eaters. Voldemort, seizing the moment, deflected Dumbledore's spell and declared triumphantly, "Dumbledore, your end is near." Dumbledore, turning to face the new threat, waved his wand in a desperate attempt to protect himself. A goblin statue sprang to his defense, absorbing the brunt of the attack. Voldemort's strategy was clear. He had learned from past failures and was prepared with contingencies. The battle had taken a dire turn, with sacrifices on both sides imminent. A few expendable soldiers to distract the Aurors, Dumbledore, and now it is you who finds himself ensnared, Voldemort declared, his voice dripping with contempt. In his eyes, those who followed him were merely disposable tools, unworthy even of bearing the dark mark. His true elite forces had accompanied him to the Ministry of Magic. With a casual flick of his wand, he released Lucius Malfoy from the enchantment that had him immobilized as a house elf statue. A faithful servant has broken free from prison, bringing with him valuable information and a plan, Voldemort announced, turning his gaze to one of the Death Eaters who had just entered. "You have served me well, Barty Crouch Jr." Amidst the assembled crowd, Barty Crouch Jr. stepped forward, his expression unreadable, offering no words in response. Dumbledore's usual composure faltered upon laying eyes on the young man. He had been present at Crouch Jr.'s trial, had seen him sentenced, and had later heard reports of his death in Azkaban. Yet here he was, much alive. How had he managed such a feat? Sirius, who remembered the young man's cries and screams from his own time in Azkaban, found the sight before him even more astonishing. The tables had turned, and what was once a clear line between attacker and defender had now blurred, complicating the confrontation further. Chapter 372. I planned everything under Voldemort's command. The Death Eaters unleashed their spells. Amidst the chaos of intertwining lights, even Dumbledore had to tread carefully. Sirius, still nursing a wound on his left rib, found himself face to face with a Death Eater in his prime. The situation looked grim. "We need to help," Harry declared. Ron and the others nodded in agreement, and they charged into the fray, wands at the ready. Thanks to John's earlier Dragon's Breath spell, the Ministry of Magic was littered with makeshift bunkers. Harry took cover behind a crystal, reshaped by the intense heat, and aimed a spell at Lucius Malfoy. Lucius deflected it effortlessly, his gaze scanning the battlefield for his son. Meanwhile, Dumbledore was preoccupied on another front, his duel with Voldemort evenly matched. The situation deteriorated as the Aurors were distracted by riots elsewhere, leaving the Ministry a veritable battleground. With 10 Death Eaters joining the fray, Voldemort had no intention of retreating. If he could eliminate Dumbledore and John in one fell swoop, his path to unification would be clear. Voldemort nearly laughed at the thought, mocking John Wick's youth and Dumbledore's folly. "You can't change anything. Today, I alone will rewrite history," Voldemort proclaimed. He ordered the Death Eaters to intensify their assault. "Savior?" he taunted, casting a spell that shattered Harry's cover. "Even without the prophecy, I will rule the wizarding world." Harry was forced to flee, with Voldemort hot on his heels. Dumbledore, seizing a momentary lapse in the Death Eaters' attack, summoned a witch to block Voldemort's spell and urged Harry, "Stay inside." Sirius encountered Rodolphus Lestrange, who could be considered his brother-in-law. The two exchanged spells, their duel taking them further apart. Lupin faced his old adversary, Drogon, their spells clashing fiercely. A spell struck Drogon's mask, revealing a face Lupin recognized from his time at Hogwarts. Before Lupin could react, Drogon cast a jinx that immobilized him. Lupin narrowly avoided a stunning spell by rolling away. Hermione, Ginny, and Luna faced off against a Death Eater named Gargson. Ginny's shattering curse was met with a flash of red from Gargson. Without their amulets, the trio proceeded with caution. Luna seized an opportunity to knock Gargson out with a cleverly aimed spell, and Hermione quickly followed up with another. Ron, pursued by Death Eaters, displayed unexpected agility. He dodged a spell with a slide and retaliated, knocking a Death Eater to the ground. Surprised by his wand's responsiveness, Ron was momentarily distracted and disarmed. Undeterred, he charged at the Death Eater, fists flying, shouting, "For Gryffindor!" Harry, eager to assist, saw Hermione under attack. He raised his wand, but his spell missed its mark. Meanwhile, Dumbledore and Voldemort were locked in a fierce duel, their spells creating small craters on the ground. Spotting a Death Eater sneaking up on Dumbledore, Harry shouted a warning. Dumbledore, with a flick of his wand, sent the Death Eater flying with a scream. Even in the face of Voldemort, Dumbledore's prowess was undeniable. Harry executed his tasks with remarkable ease, maintaining his composure even as Voldemort's reinforcements arrived. The elevator made a loud noise as it came to a stop, revealing Tonks, who had come to assess the situation. Kingsley and Moody were occupied with guarding the captured Death Eaters below, leaving Tonks to assist above. However, she was immediately greeted by a barrage of curses, forcing her back toward the elevator. "What's happening?" she asked, bewildered. She had thought the Death Eaters were already handled, yet here she was, facing a multitude of them. She had initially come to aid in dealing with Bellatrix, but the situation had evidently taken a turn for the worse, especially with Voldemort's unexpected presence. Without dwelling on it too much, Tonks seized an opportunity to dive away from the elevator, aiming her wand at a Death Eater and firing a burst of white light. After deflecting 2 spells, she was struck by a silver light, causing a severe wound in her abdomen. "Protego," she muttered, casting a protective spell as she moved, her face turning pale. A Death Eater aimed his wand at her, and Harry, witnessing this from his hiding spot, felt a surge of anxiety. He emerged from behind the witch statue, casting spells at the Death Eaters. "Impedimenta!" he shouted, creating invisible barriers that one of the Death Eaters collided with, blood gushing from his nose. Before Harry could cast another spell, he was hit and sent flying. The Death Eaters' strength was formidable, surpassing those they had encountered in the Department of Mysteries. Barty Crouch Jr., despite missing a hand, managed to incapacitate Hermione and 2 others with a trio of spells. Ron, who had developed resilience thanks to his encounters with Malfoy, was still in the fray. Just as he was about to land a final blow, he was kicked away, rolling across the ground. He barely avoided a lethal curse, thanks to Sirius in his animagus form dragging him to safety. Lupin, meanwhile, was overwhelmed by 3 opponents. Despite his expertise in defense against the dark arts, he was subdued and eventually fell, struck by a combination of spells that left him disarmed, paralyzed, and unconscious. The tide of the battle seemed to turn when Harry managed to rescue Tonks. However, the situation quickly deteriorated as Sirius was struck by a curse, and Ron was once again thrown aside. The Death Eaters converged on them, with Bellatrix Lestrange leading the charge, her left hand petrified, but her resolve to kill Harry unwavering. Feeling a momentary weakness, Harry tightened his grip on his wand, facing the advancing Death Eaters with determination. Lucius Malfoy, seizing the moment, directed Drogon and Rodolphus to assist in the battle against Dumbledore, leaving Harry and his allies to face Bellatrix and the remaining Death Eaters. Despite the departure of 4 Death Eaters, Bellatrix's madness only intensified. "No one can save you now, little baby Potter," she cackled. Tonks, clutching her wounded abdomen and sweating from the pain, stood up and positioned herself beside Harry, wand at the ready. Sirius, reverting to his human form, looked worse for wear, but remained defiant. As Bellatrix taunted them, a new figure approached, causing her to pause. John, smiling, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Harry, how about we make a deal?" he proposed, offering an unexpected twist in the midst of chaos. Harry stood out from the crowd, capturing everyone's attention, including John's. A fleeting shadow of darkness passed through John's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a smile. "The success of this plan rests on your shoulders," he said, his gaze sweeping over the group surrounding Harry. His voice carried a weight of significance as he asked, "What's your decision?" Without hesitation or even inquiring about the specifics of the plan, Harry responded, "I agree. Save them." His decision was driven by a desperate need to protect those around him. Bellatrix, who had been simmering with rage, felt her anger boil over at being disregarded. "Kill him!" she shrieked, her voice laced with venom. Her loathing for John had reached a breaking point. With a casual snap of his fingers, John signaled the commencement of their plan. "It's time to act," he declared, setting into motion events that would change their fates forever. Chapter 373. I Praise the Stars. John spoke, and suddenly the floor beneath Harry's feet gave way, drawing them inside. There was a loud bang in front of the Death Eaters as a blond man apparated into the scene. King swiftly grabbed a Death Eater's wand-holding hand, pressed the wand against his chest, and cast a banishing spell, sending him flying like a cannonball. Cedric stepped through a golden gate, waving his wand. A mist began to emerge, quickly enveloping the entire hall. Bellatrix, taken aback by the familiar fog, shouted, "Get out of the fog!" Two red lights shot out from the mist, striking two Death Eaters, while a poisonous snake coiled itself around Bellatrix's ankle. Another Death Eater, Roll, was about to retreat when a large hand reached out from the mist, seizing his wrist. A silver light then pierced his abdomen, wreaking havoc within his body. Percy, wielding his wand, cast a disarming spell that effortlessly snatched another Death Eater's wand. Fleur, defying gravity, launched a series of curses that continuously struck an unfortunate ghost in the ear. Cedric, with a flick of his wand, transformed a stone into a bird that flew directly into a Death Eater's eyes. As the mist spread further, Bellatrix had just dispatched the poisonous snake when she saw a platinum gold figure approaching through the fog. "It's you?" she exclaimed upon recognizing Draco Malfoy. "Of course it's me," Draco retorted. Facing Bellatrix, who was akin to an aunt to him, Draco showed no mercy. "Thunderbolt explosion!" he shouted, casting a blasting curse. The spell surged towards Bellatrix, striking her petrified arm, which exploded, eliciting a scream from her. "Now you look more pleasing to the eye, ugly," Draco taunted, his words fueling Bellatrix's rage as she attacked him frantically. The tide of the battle had turned. Meanwhile, Harry found himself in a pothole in the ground, looking up at the fog. They created those mists, he realized, thinking of the Department of Mysteries. "Harry, stay here," Sirius instructed, about to climb out despite his injuries. "Sirius, you're injured. Let me go and check," Harry protested anxiously. "Harry, you are the most important," Sirius insisted, pressing Harry down. "You are our hope. Voldemort wants you dead. You must protect yourself." Harry, burdened with the role of savior, fell silent. He remembered Draco's words, "You're not the savior, Potter." "But Hermione and the others are still out there," Harry said reluctantly. "Moonface and Dumbledore, too." "They'll be fine," Sirius assured him, glancing at Tonks. "Keep an eye on Harry." Tonks nodded, her face pale. Sirius, with his keen sense of smell, could accurately locate others. Transforming into a black dog, he set out to find Hermione and the girls first. Hermione slowly regained consciousness to find the great battle still raging. "Ginny, Luna, wake up," she urged, rousing her friends. The Death Eaters had fled the fog, buying them some time. As they stooped and walked in the opposite direction, Hermione felt someone pull her. Instinctively, she grabbed Ginny, who in turn grabbed Luna. They all exclaimed in surprise before being pulled into a bunker. As they prepared to draw their wands, they saw Lupin, pale-faced. "Lupin," Hermione said, lowering her wand quickly. "Don't go out. It's chaotic outside," Lupin warned, his voice weak and interrupted by pauses. "Lupin, are you okay?" Ginny asked, leaning in with concern. Lupin managed a weak smile, turning his gaze to Hermione. "Hermione, do you know why John is here?" he asked earnestly. Hermione, still reeling from the shock of John's sudden appearance, shook her head. "John must have his reasons, perhaps to save people." "It's not that simple, I'm afraid," Lupin said, panting, a cold sweat streaming down his brow. Lupin had his reservations about John, who had once worked closely with Johnny Silverhand. He knew too well that Silverhand was not the benevolent figure some believed him to be. "He likely has an ulterior motive, and I fear it involves Harry." Upin speculated, his concern not unfounded. Earlier, he had overheard a troubling conversation between John and Harry. Given his experience with Johnny Silverhand's unscrupulous nature, Lupin was aware of the man's ability to charm and manipulate, even to the extent of using a person's life as leverage. He urgently wanted Hermione to warn Harry against any dealings with John. However, Hermione harbored a belief in John's good intentions, her faith causing her to hesitate. John wouldn't harm Harry. Despite their differences, I can't see him doing anything to hurt him, she argued, torn between her trust in John and her concern for Harry. Ginny was uncertain, having not heard anything explicitly negative about John, yet she couldn't shake off the worry for Harry's safety. Luna, on the other hand, was steadfast in her belief. John is kind-hearted. He wouldn't harm anyone, she declared confidently. Lupin's sense of helplessness wash over him. It seemed the children were unaware of John's darker aspects, mistaking him for a benign figure. Johnny Silverhand was a man whose influence had rapidly spread across the magical community, not someone to be underestimated. In the midst of this, Sirius appeared, visibly injured, yet concerned for Lupin. "Moony, are you all right?" he asked, using Lupin's affectionate nickname. "Padfoot," Lupin greeted him, noting Sirius's injuries. It was clear that the outcome of the ongoing battle would hinge on Dumbledore's actions. The confrontation between Dumbledore and Voldemort was reaching its climax. As Voldemort attempted to overpower Dumbledore with the help of his Death Eaters, Dumbledore cleverly manipulated the battlefield, causing the ground to collapse beneath them. "Running away, Tom?" he taunted, aiming to provoke Voldemort and prevent him from retreating into hiding. Voldemort, frustrated by the incompetence of his followers, noticed someone emerging from the fog and seized the opportunity to vanish, leaving Dumbledore to fend off the remaining Death Eaters. In the chaos, Harry, Hermione, Ginny, and Luna found themselves in the thick of the battle. Harry, in particular, experienced a surge of power that repelled an attacking statue and protected him with a barrier of debris. Dumbledore, witnessing Harry's transformation and the pain it caused him, approached with a mix of concern and determination. "Harry, it's not your similarities to him that matter, but how you differ," Dumbledore said, offering words of encouragement. Harry, struggling against the influence controlling him, was reminded of his life, his friends, and his family. With a renewed sense of resolve, he confronted the vision of Voldemort, declaring, "You are the one who is weak, Voldemort. You'll never understand love or friendship." As Harry fought back, the darkness within him began to recede, driven away by his memories and the support of those around him. The air around them seemed to solidify, forming an impenetrable barrier that isolated them from the outside world. The darkness coalesced into a figure, and there stood Voldemort, wand in hand, sneering at Harry. "You are a fool, Harry Potter," he taunted, observing Harry's defiant yet powerless stance. "You will lose everything." Harry met Voldemort's gaze. Fully aware of the Dark Wizard's intention to flee, yet he found no humor in the situation. Just then, a voice broke the tense silence. John stepped into the circle, his presence unexpected, as he chuckled, "If you're done with your monologue, perhaps it's time we had a chat." Outside the barrier, Dumbledore, who had been unable to penetrate the magical enclosure, looked on in surprise. Hermione, spotting John, couldn't contain her relief and shouted, "John, save Harry!" Voldemort, taken aback by John's sudden appearance, demanded, "How did you get in here?" John simply pointed upwards, a grin playing on his lips. "The stars have guided me," he declared. As Voldemort and Harry followed his gaze, the dome of the Ministry of Magic transformed, revealing a breathtaking vista of a starry night sky. Hundreds of stars twinkled above them, and with a flourish of his wand, John summoned a brilliant aurora that enveloped the trio. Shedding his cloak with a dramatic gesture, John faced Voldemort squarely. "For the third time, Tom, are you ready?" he challenged. At the mention of his real name, a shadow of unease crossed Voldemort's face, a flicker of memory darkening his expression. Meanwhile, outside the barrier, Barty Crouch Jr. struggled to his feet, his gaze locked on the unfolding scene. The outcome of this confrontation would not only seal his fate, but also determine the course of his allegiance. The air crackled with anticipation as destinies intertwined, each participant aware that the events about to unfold would change the course of their lives forever. Chapter 374, A Step into the Point of No Return. The atmosphere was charged with tension as the third duel commenced. John, with a serene expression, rolled up his sleeves. "If you've received a complete education at Hogwarts, then you're surely aware," he began, a faint smile playing on his lips as he lifted his wand with his left hand, "of the proper etiquette before a duel." Is he out of his mind? Sirius couldn't help but think. Admittedly, the boy had shown remarkable strength, but to challenge Voldemort to a duel was sheer madness. "Break this enchantment," Dumbledore commanded, his expression grave as he prepared to act. However, before he could proceed, 6 explosions sounded, and the members of the Quunxing Club positioned themselves in front of him. "What are you doing?" Dumbledore inquired, his gaze sweeping over them. Jin, with unwavering calm, raised his wand and stated, "You shall not interfere with our king." "Don't steal my lines," Malfoy interjected, glaring at Jin before coolly adding, "Even if you are Dumbledore, you have no right to intervene." Neville silently unsheathed his sword, Fleur elegantly brushed her hair aside, and Cedric offered a wry smile, steadfastly holding his ground. Percy cast a dark glance towards his siblings, signaling his allegiance. Meanwhile, the Death Eaters regrouped behind Lucius. "What should we do?" one of them asked, uncertainty in his voice. Lucius, maintaining his composure, replied, "We wait. Fleeing now would only invite Voldemort's wrath later, but against Dumbledore we stand no chance." Though the Death Eaters were discontent, they recognized their limitations. "Are you okay?" Tonks, leaning on Lupin for support, found solace in his presence. She shook her head, indicating her resilience. Dumbledore, halted by his own compassion, found himself unable to act against his students. Within the barrier, John executed a graceful bow, a traditional salute before a duel. Voldemort, sneering at the gesture, remarked, "You possess quite the courage to seek a duel with me." John, placing a silver ring on his left hand, retorted with a chuckle, "Why should I fear a defeated foe?" Voldemort's expression darkened. "Do you take pride in defeating mere fragments of my soul while others face peril? Then face me directly, Tom Riddle," John challenged. "Don't utter that name." Voldemort, enraged by the mention of his despised birth name, launched an attack. John, with an empty right hand, summoned a silver sword, deflecting the spell. He then raised his wand in his left hand, unleashing a barrage of white light that transformed into several streaks. Freed from Dumbledore's restraint, Voldemort's power was formidable. John, who had only witnessed it from a distance in the past, had nearly perished under its might. The green light tore through the ground as John agilely dodged, using his right hand for support and his left for offense, engaging Voldemort in a fierce battle with Harry caught in the middle. "That's all you have, Tom," John bellowed, his left hand enveloped in silver. Embedded within was not a mere magic crystal, but a super magic crystal. A shattering curse erupted into brilliant white light, clashing with the black current emanating from Voldemort's wand. The two forces collided, resulting in a deadlock. Voldemort, casting a surreptitious glance at Dumbledore, knew he couldn't afford to delay. The confrontation had to be resolved swiftly. The black energy condensed, unleashing a massive impact against the barrier. Voldemort, reverting to a classic incantation, prepared for his next move. Black energy flickered in John's eyes as he, too, turned and waved his wand. "Avada Kedavra!" Voldemort intoned. "Bones to dust," John countered. Green clashed with white, reminiscent of the confrontation between John and Tom Riddle during their second year. The collision of the two spells caused Harry to seek cover elsewhere. Voldemort sensed something amiss as where their spells met, a burst of ethereal music filled the air. His wand trembled, as if electrified, and the light connecting their wands turned a dazzling gold. The scene, eerily familiar, left Harry in a trance. Even Dumbledore's expression shifted dramatically. "What is this?" he exclaimed. John and Voldemort were lifted into the air simultaneously, surrounded by 1,000 arcs of light. These arcs interwove around them, forming a domed golden net that was impenetrable to all. In the midst of the chaos, Harry found himself caught in the unfolding drama. The Phoenix's song filled the air, casting an incredible aura over everyone present. Dumbledore, in particular, was deeply affected, his mind racing with the knowledge that only 2 wands in existence were made from the Phoenix's feather, one wielded by Harry, the other by Voldemort. The situation escalated when Voldemort, addressing John with a mix of disdain and fear, realized the gravity of John's intentions. "You think restraining me will change anything?" Voldemort sneered at John, underestimating the situation. No one can intervene now. John, however, faced Voldemort's immense power with a calm smile. "Have you forgotten about the third player in this game?" he asked, causing Voldemort's confidence to waver as he turned his gaze towards Harry. The fear of death tinged Voldemort's voice as he questioned, "You want him to be the one to kill me?" He couldn't fathom the idea of his defeat being handed to someone else, especially in such a manner. "Of course not," John replied, his tone serious yet calm. He then revealed his trump card, much to Voldemort's horror. From his bag, John produced two significant items, Hufflepuff's gold cup and Ravenclaw's diadem. Voldemort's eyes burned with rage and fear. The memory of the Gringotts heist, where his Horcrux had been stolen, was still fresh in his mind. "It was you," he exclaimed, realizing the extent of John's plan. With a smile that held a mixture of determination and sorrow, John looked into Voldemort's eyes. "Tom, I aim to change everything," he declared. Then, in a surprising twist, John turned not towards Voldemort or the Horcruxes, but towards Harry. Magical energy, resembling a blend of stars and auroras, enveloped them, creating a powerful magical field. John's appearance seemed to age as he spoke, his voice resonating with a deep electric quality. "I'm crossing a point of no return," he announced, as tendrils of dark energy extended from his hand, binding Harry and pulling him into the center of the spell. The onlookers were horrified. "Harry!" they shouted in unison, their concern palpable. Sirius attempted to intervene, only to be stopped by Neville in a surprising act of aggression. The scene descended into chaos as Ron, Hermione, and Malfoy found themselves in a scuffle, their actions driven by desperation and confusion. Dumbledore, witnessing John's bold move, regretted his previous decisions. He, along with Kingsley and Percy, tried to breach the magical field, but their efforts were in vain against the formidable barrier. Even Fleur and Cedric, despite their best efforts, were unable to make a dent in John's defenses. Inside the magical field, John confronted Harry with a reminder of their previous agreement. Harry, confused and scared, feared the worst. "Are you going to kill me?" he asked, his voice trembling. John's response was calm and reassuring. "No, I won't kill you. I need to take something from you," he explained, just as Harry's scar erupted in excruciating pain. John's touch seemed to delve into Harry's very soul, causing him to scream in agony. The sight of John extracting a mysterious essence from Harry's scar left everyone aghast. Dumbledore, realizing the gravity of John's actions, understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented. John was using the soul itself as a tool to access Harry's consciousness. After a moment of intense pain and disorientation, Harry found himself in a white station, a place within his own mind that he had visited under dire circumstances before. As he looked around, trying to grasp the situation, he realized the depth of John's plan and the lengths to which he was willing to go to achieve his mysterious goals. John stood there, his gaze vacant, as if he was unsure of his surroundings. Yet, deep down, he knew precisely where he was. This wasn't his first visit. The misty illusion, a realm where death itself had been witnessed, and meeting the god of death was his true objective. The air around him was thick with a fog that seemed to blur the lines between reality and the supernatural. The misty illusion was a place few dared to tread, and even fewer understood. It was a crossroads of sorts, a meeting point between the living and the ethereal, where the god of death held court. John's heart pounded in his chest, not out of fear, but anticipation. He had prepared for this moment, gathering his courage and steeling his resolve. His journey here was fueled by a purpose that went beyond mere curiosity or the thrill of the unknown. He sought answers, and perhaps a way to alter what seemed to be an unchangeable fate. As he ventured deeper into the misty illusion, the fog began to swirl around him, whispering secrets of the ages. John could feel the presence of the god of death, an entity as ancient as time itself, watching him from the shadows. It was a sensation that would have unnerved most, but John pressed on, driven by a need that outweighed his fear. Finally, he arrived at the heart of the misty illusion, where the fog parted to reveal a figure shrouded in darkness. The god of death stood before him, its form both terrifying and awe-inspiring. John took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I have come to seek your wisdom," John began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I wish to understand the mysteries of life and death, and to challenge the fate that has been laid before me." The god of death regarded John with an inscrutable gaze, its silence stretching into eternity. Then, in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss, it spoke. Many have come before you, seeking what you seek. What makes you believe you are different? John met the god's gaze, his determination unwavering. Because I am willing to do whatever it takes to change my destiny. I am not here to accept the inevitable, but to defy it. A moment passed, and then the god of death nodded, a gesture that sent ripples through the misty illusion. Very well, it said, but be warned, the path you seek is fraught with peril. To challenge fate is to challenge the very fabric of the universe. Are you prepared to face the consequences? John nodded, his resolve firm. I am. And with that, the god of death extended its hand, beckoning John to follow. Together, they ventured deeper into the misty illusion, towards a destiny that was yet to be written. Chapter 375, Awakening the Dead. The surroundings were enveloped in clouds of steam, creating an atmosphere that felt both ethereal and mysterious. Harry found himself lying on a white, indistinct ground that was neither hot nor cold. As he sat up, he realized he was unharmed, with no physical injuries or headaches to speak of. Touching his face, he noticed his glasses were missing, yet his vision was crystal clear. This place, known as Misty Illusion, was truly magical. It existed in the realm between life and death, unique to each soul that entered it. For Harry, it seemed to take the form of King's Cross Station, a place of profound significance as his first gateway into the wizarding world. John appeared beside Harry, his demeanor casual as he gestured for Harry to sit anywhere he liked, treating the place as if it were his own home. Harry, puzzled and wary, questioned John's actions and their current location. John, unfazed, took a seat on a station bench and invited Harry to join him. Despite his initial hesitation, Harry felt no sense of danger from John and decided to sit down. As they looked out at the railway tracks, John remarked on how long it had been since they last sat together, reminiscing about their shared adventures and mischiefs before their second year at Hogwarts. Harry, too, felt the weight of the time that had passed, and the two shared a moment of nostalgia without any underlying hostility. John conjured a berry bean and offered it to Harry, who accepted it, but was puzzled by its lack of taste. John explained that they were in Misty Illusion, a liminal space between life and death, which explained the absence of flavor. Harry, taken aback, questioned whether they were dead. John clarified that they were on the brink of death, sharing a light moment as he popped a multi-flavored bean into his mouth. The conversation shifted to the conflict between John and Dumbledore, with John revealing that Dumbledore feared him due to his research into taboos, particularly those concerning time and the soul. Harry, somewhat oblivious to the depth of their conflict, listened as John compared himself to Voldemort, albeit with a sense of humor about their differences. John confessed to having delved into the forbidden territories of time and soul, setting him apart from Harry, whom he viewed as a savior, while he considered himself an ordinary man. Despite this, John expressed his disillusionment with Dumbledore, who he felt had treated him unfairly. As the conversation deepened, John revealed his expertise in matters of the soul, hinting at a deeper knowledge than Dumbledore's, particularly concerning another soul residing within Harry. This revelation left Harry stunned, as John summoned balls of light in his palm, each one shimmering with an otherworldly glow, hinting at the profound secrets and knowledge John was about to share. As if conjured by magic, ethereal beings resembling elves began to flit around the station. Amidst this mystical scene, a rope materialized in John's grasp. With a swift motion, he pulled, and a vulnerable, red-skinned child, appearing naked and curled up, was forcibly brought forth. The child's frailty was such that John could easily dominate it with a mere fragment of his soul. Harry, witnessing this, was visibly taken aback. "What is this?" he inquired, confusion lacing his voice. "This," John began, his gaze fixed on the delicate soul before them, "is a piece of Tom's soul. Do you recall the diary we destroyed in our second year?" "Yes, that's where I learned Tom Riddle was another name for Voldemort," Harry responded, the memory clear in his mind. "Exactly. That diary was one fragment of Voldemort's soul. He split his soul into 6 pieces, creating 6 Horcruxes," John explained, his tone grave. He then proceeded to step on the childlike soul with his shoe, eliciting piercing screams from the entity. Horcruxes grant immortality to Voldemort, and this, he gestured to the tormented soul, is one of them. You, Harry, are the unintended 7th Horcrux. Harry's heart supple. Encant the revelation. You mean I'm a Horcrux? But how? When did? Your scar, John interjected, on the night your parents were murdered. A part of his soul latched onto you. John's words struck Harry with the force of a physical blow. This means Voldemort cannot die as long as you live. The irony, John continued, a bitter edge to his voice, is that the so-called savior is unknowingly preserving the life of the darkest wizard of our time. I suspect Dumbledore might have known that Voldemort's demise could necessitate your own. Overwhelmed, Harry slumped onto the bench, his mind reeling from the implications. As a train approached, its whistle cutting through the heavy air, John's attention shifted. An old friend arrives, he remarked, a smile playing on his lips as the train came to a halt. Should we board? Harry asked, still trying to process the recent revelations. Of course, John replied, glancing at the soul still lying on the ground. Grab your ticket. Reluctantly, Harry picked up the soul, its red skin reminiscent of a raw wound, and followed John onto the train. The doors were about to close when Harry, burdened by the soul and his heavy heart, managed to step inside. John led the way, his stride confident and unaffected by the train's motion. Harry, in contrast, struggled to keep up, the soul awkwardly cradled in his arm. They passed empty carriages until they encountered a solitary figure shrouded in a cloak, reminiscent of an invisibility cloak, with a hood obscuring their face. We meet again, the hooded figure greeted, their voice ambiguous. John took a seat opposite the figure, and after a moment's hesitation, Harry joined them. You might say that, John replied nonchalantly to the figure's remark. I assumed there would be more like you here. The figure chuckled, a sound that seemed to resonate with a deep melancholy. It's not a role many covet, they said, hinting at a life spent in solitude and secrecy. John and Harry found themselves in a place that defied the boundaries of life and death, a liminal space where the past and future intertwined. As they conversed with the mysterious figure, it became clear that their journey was far from over. They were on a path that would lead them to confront the very essence of fate and redemption, a journey that would test the limits of their courage and resolve. Death is never a good thing, the hooded figure stated, lifting his head slightly. Harry strained his eyes, attempting to discern the face hidden within the shadowy recesses of the hood, but to no avail. It was unwise of you to awaken the dead, John Wick, the figure continued, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to press down on the very air around them. Despite his stillness, the child cradled in Harry's arms began to breathe more laboriously, each breath sounding as though it might be their last. John Wick, standing before Harry, waved his hand dismissively and sighed. It's quite unethical to demand payment before the transaction is even completed, he remarked, his tone laced with disapproval. Grim Reaper. He addressed the hooded figure with a hint of recognition and perhaps a trace of defiance. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the exchange between John and the Grim Reaper hinting at a complex history and a dangerous game of power. Harry, caught in the middle with the fragile life in his arms, could only watch as the two figures navigated their standoff, each word and gesture loaded with meaning and consequence. In this moment, the lines between right and wrong, life and death, seemed to blur, leaving Harry to ponder the true cost of meddling with forces beyond human comprehension. Chapter 376, A Bargain with Death. The term Grim Reaper ignited a flurry of unfamiliar thoughts in Harry's mind. You are audacious, John Wick, the god of death remarked with a deep chuckle. Negotiating terms with the god of death is hardly wise. I am an alchemist, John replied, leaning back in his chair with a smile. The principle of equivalent exchange is the unchanging law of alchemy. Alchemists are far more tenacious than any merchant. Indeed, you are a fascinating one, John Wick, Death responded, raising a skeletal hand from beneath his robe. Harry shivered, clutching the baby more tightly. People who dare to toy with death are asking for trouble, John said, his voice taking on a poetic tone. He glanced at the child in Harry's arms. You mentioned this during our last encounter. Are you proposing to use this as a bargaining chip? Death inquired, intrigued. This soul is quite frail. John shook his head. Tom Marvolo Riddle. At the mention of Voldemort's name, Death's attention snapped to the child, who squirmed uncomfortably in Harry's embrace. You enjoy manipulating the destinies of the powerful, John observed, a peculiar gleam in his eyes. The combative eldest, the arrogant middle child, and the modest youngest. The tale of the three brothers, Harry suddenly remembered. Hermione had illustrated this story during one of Dumbledore's army meetings. It felt strangely relevant to him now. Tom Riddle has gambled with death, making his soul particularly appealing to you, John continued, locking eyes with Death. The Grim Reaper shifted his gaze from the child, his expression obscured by his hood. "What do you seek?" he asked, clearly interested in Voldemort's soul. John's palms were damp with sweat, but his gaze remained steady on the god of death. "Equivalent exchange," he stated firmly. "One soul for another?" Death proposed. Harry felt an invisible force push him back in his chair. Outside, the train that had been moving slowly now seemed to accelerate, despite the lack of scenery to gauge its speed by. "Do you comprehend the gravity of your words?" Death's voice was icy. "Do you wish to become my next victim?" Harry's heart raced at the thought. He turned to John, expecting to see fear, but instead found him smiling, seemingly oblivious to the peril in Death's tone. "Of course not. However, the soul of the Dark Lord, who has evaded death by sacrificing many others, is far more enticing. In theory, he could live indefinitely." John raised a finger, wagging it slightly. "That's the rule, a rule you cannot alter." Death fell silent, acknowledging that he could not actively seek to end a life. Like the story of the three brothers, he had never directly intervened, instead waiting for their own demise. The eldest was driven by pride to his death, the middle brother to suicide by his unrequited love, and the youngest survived not merely because of the invisibility cloak, but because he chose not to provoke others with it. After all, there were ways to see through the cloak, as demonstrated by Dumbledore and Moody's magical eye. The youngest brother's survival was due to his discretion, unlike his elder siblings. "How long do you believe he can survive?" Death finally asked, his tone icy. "A long time," John asserted. "Without this deal, I assure you, he will live much longer." Death laughed dismissively. "You're delusional. Voldemort will eventually fall to another wizard, Dumbledore being there." But John's next words wiped the smirk off Death's face. He stared intently at the god of death, ready to shatter his assumptions. John Wick, standing before the embodiment of death itself, spoke with a calm yet firm tone. "I will aid him, help him evade the clutches of death, and secure for him eternal life." Harry Potter, standing nearby, was taken aback. "John, you," he began, disbelief coloring his tone. Before he could process the situation fully, John fixed his gaze upon Death, his next words carrying an undeniable weight. "I have created the Philosopher's Stone," he declared, calmly. As the train they were on hurtled through the landscape at breakneck speed, the scenery outside morphed from a void into a white mist, occasionally taking on human-like shapes. Death fell silent, pondering John's claim. "The Philosopher's Stone? The same one from our first year?" Harry wondered silently, trying and failing to gauge John's sincerity. After a moment of contemplation, Death voiced its skepticism. "You lack the capability to create such a thing at your current level of skill." "In the wizarding world, miracles are not in short supply," John retorted, undeterred. It seemed John's confidence swayed Death, who then admitted, "No one has ever dared to bargain with me in such a manner." John's smile didn't waver. "This is a negotiation, not a threat," he clarified. According to John's logic, Voldemort's quest for immortality wasn't a lost cause. With the combination of Horcruxes and the Philosopher's Stone, not even death could claim his soul. This was a scenario death could not permit, having spent nearly a century hunting the souls of the three brothers, with Voldemort's soul being of particular significance. "Very well, I accept your proposal, impressed by your wisdom and bravery," Death conceded, extending a skeletal hand towards John, reminiscent of its dealings with the three brothers. John grasped Death's hand, his smile taking on a mischievous quality. "I must confess, I've been deceiving you," he revealed. Death, taken aback, sought clarification. John's smile broadened. "It appears that even death cannot elude the grasp of magic." This revelation was new to John. His only prior encounter with death had left some uncertainty. However, Death's current reaction confirmed his theory. Death could not directly intervene in the mortal realm, thus remaining subject to the laws of magic. As they shook hands, a golden thread emerged, intertwining around their wrists, forming a tree-shaped sigil made of circles and lines. "What is this?" Death inquired, alarmed. "Have you forgotten? I am an alchemist," John reminded him. "And for such a transaction, a proper witness is required." Death's voice betrayed its shock upon recognizing the symbol. "The Gate of Truth?" "My mentor currently oversees the Gate of Truth," John explained, his smile radiant. "Your agreement has been sealed as an equivalent exchange." Their hands remained locked, and for the first time, Death seemed genuinely unsettled. It had intended to deceive, much like it had with the three brothers. However, John had turned the tables, invoking the alchemist's ultimate secret, the Gate of Truth, a power even Death could not defy. If one could see Death's face, it would surely be a sight to behold, John mused. "I, John Wick, propose an exchange, the soul of Tom Marvolo Riddle for that of Heinrich Edgar, bound by the Gate of Truth as our contract." Above their clasped hands, two doors materialized, and John's declaration solidified into a binding agreement. Harry watched in astonishment as John proposed to exchange souls, a concept he had thought impossible. Magic cannot resurrect the dead, he thought, a fundamental lesson taught to every Hogwarts first year. "You are familiar with this ancient magic," Death acknowledged, genuinely impressed. It was a rare and nearly forgotten art, yet John, with one of history's most formidable alchemists as his mentor and having visited the Gate of Truth himself, knew its secrets. Under the watchful eyes of John and Harry, Death slowly nodded, signifying its agreement. The contract that had entwined them vanished, leaving behind a profound sense of change. A parchment materialized before them. Reaper swiftly took the contract, tucking it into his robe. Just as Harry thought the ordeal was over, Death let out a sneer. "You are indeed a clever man, John Wick, but you seem to forget that dealing with death always comes with a price." "You don't need to worry about me," John replied, his voice steady and calm. The train began to slow, and Reaper stood, gesturing with a wave of his hand. Abru, Teely, the train halted at a station shrouded in fog. Death disembarked, stepping into the misty world beyond. Through the window, Harry thought he saw a couple waving at him, but as he strained his eyes for a better look, the train jerked back into motion. In that moment, John allowed himself a brief respite, his body finally relaxing. His palms were slick with sweat. Even he had to feign composure in the face of the legendary entity of death. The landscape outside the window morphed into familiar territory, reminiscent of the path to Hogwarts. Yet, alarmingly, there were no tracks ahead, only a dead end looming ominously. Harry's realization came with a scream. "Oops, there's no way ahead!" The train, devoid of any crew, hurtled towards the dead end. It seemed Death had left them with one final disdainful trick. John merely shrugged, muttering under his breath, "Childish temper." He then steadied Harry, pulling a black feather from his pocket and placing it in Harry's hand. "Hold this," he instructed, his voice calm despite the imminent danger. The train was now less than a kilometer from the dead end, the collision mere seconds away. Yet, John's demeanor remained unfazed, a stark contrast to Harry's growing panic. As the train teetered on the edge of a cliff, John revealed a locket concealed beneath his collar. Opening it, he exposed a black stone nestled inside. With a chuckle, he said, "Have a nice trip, Harry." Suddenly, a blinding white light engulfed everything. Chapter 377, Crossing the Forbidden Line. In the enigmatic realm of the misty illusion, time flows differently. To an outsider, the passage of time might seem brief, but within, moments stretch and bend in unusual ways. As John opened his eyes, he nearly lost grip of his wand, his gaze locking onto Voldemort's pallid face across from him. Voldemort's visage bore an ashen hue, with what appeared to be fragments of debris floating around his form. Ethereal melodies filled the air, enhancing the surreal atmosphere, while John maintained his control over Harry with a firm grip on his right hand. Harry, too, emerged from his trance, though his consciousness was shrouded in a fog of confusion. Taking a deep breath, John connected with the celestial dome and stars of the Ministry of Magic, channeling an increased surge of magical energy. The magic, vibrant as a spectrum of rainbow light, enveloped the trio with an intense force. As the focal point of this magical deluge, John's body bore the brunt of the immense pressure, yet Voldemort was far from unscathed. "What are you planning to do?" Voldemort inquired, his voice laced with reluctance. He was trapped. Releasing his hold would make him the prime target of the overwhelming magical onslaught. With Dumbledore waiting in the wings, escape was not an option. John responded with a sly grin. "I'm about to undertake what you have never dared." The golden cup, suspended beside him, ascended above his head, drawing in the vast magical energy. A flicker of black air passed through John's eyes, casting a strange and eerie glow. "The stars illuminate our path home," he declared, suddenly lifting his right hand to grasp the golden cup. Magic poured forth, and golden sand began to overflow from the cup, cascading down in a continuous stream. The environment transformed around them, with the Ministry of Magic receding from view at an alarming rate. "The Hufflepuff Gold Cup, bearer of all, I dedicate my time and soul to you. With magic as my forge, I commence the refinement process." As John donned the Ravenclaw crown, hundreds of silver-white soul spheres emerged, descending into the golden cup. "What in the world is he doing? Why are there so many souls?" Lupin exclaimed in shock. The scene unfolding before them was visible to all. John was manipulating time and sacrificing souls, venturing into the realm of the forbidden. Dumbledore, unable to stand idly by any longer, brandished the Elder Wand, attempting to shatter the magical barrier. Yet, John remained undeterred. With the infusion of time and souls, the Hufflepuff Gold Cup shone with the brilliance of a miniature sun. "Stop this madness, John," Dumbledore implored. However, at that moment, every member of the Star Society, previously incapacitated by Dumbledore, rose to their feet in defiance. "Do you comprehend the gravity of John Wick's actions?" Dumbledore asked, his voice tinged with complexity. "I'm unaware," Malfoy replied with a smirk, "but it's clear he's engaged in something that demands our non-interference, and that suffices for us." The Society of Stars, united in their resolve, raised their wands against Dumbledore, but prepared to defend their king at all costs. Dumbledore's expression was a mix of conflict and concern. What John was attempting transcended Dumbledore's threshold of acceptance. The power at John's disposal threatened to obliterate London itself. John, with Voldemort in his left hand and the gold cup aloft in his right, formed a triangle with Harry, who remained under the influence of the Soul Eater curse. As John introduced the final component into the gold cup, a Philosopher's Stone, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. The blood-red stone levitated gently, surrounded by indistinct murmurs emanating from the cup, in a language understood by only a select few. A magical circle materialized on the surface of the gold cup, drawing Voldemort's covetous gaze. He yearned for the Philosopher's Stone, convinced it was the key to his deepest desires. Were it not for his current restraint, he would have risked everything to claim it. As Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix sprang into action, disregarding the looming threat of the Death Eaters, they launched an assault on the Star Society. Neville countered Sirius, Fleur engaged Tonks, Cedric confronted Lupin, while Percy, Gin, and Malfoy simultaneously attacked Dumbledore. Despite their efforts, Dumbledore's prowess was overwhelming, repelling their attacks with a mere wave of his wand. A potent spell emanated from his wand, striking the magical field and causing it to tremble. John's expression hardened as the Philosopher's Stone descended into the golden cup, marking the culmination of his forbidden endeavor. In a moment that symbolized the convergence of forbidden powers, John stood at the epicenter of a magical maelstrom. The overflowing sands, floating souls, and the Philosopher's Stone were united under the immense force of his magic, coalescing into a singular, potent sigil. To control time, to govern life and death, and to breach the sacred act of creation, John mused, his right hand clenched as if to physically mold the magic. These three taboos, when combined, give rise to. His voice trailed off as the magic surged. The Holy Grail. As the golden radiance that enveloped him receded, the skies above London transformed, heralding the birth of an anomaly. The Ministry of Magic trembled, its foundations cracking open as the enchanted stars that adorned its dome flickered dimly. John's gaze locked onto Voldemort, a golden thread of tension vibrating between them, on the brink of snapping. Both felt the immense pressure bearing down on them, a testament to the gravity of their confrontation. Adorned with a crown and holding the Holy Grail, John's eyes shifted, his pupils narrowing into slits. A chilling premonition of doom crept into Voldemort's heart, prompting an instinctive reaction to shut his eyes. Return of the soul, John declared, casting wandlessly. Voldemort's body seized, the delicate balance they shared shattered, and specters began to circle him. Despite nearly collapsing, John's focus never wavered from Voldemort, signaling the imminent end of their standoff. The chaos escalated as members of the Star Club intervened. Jin dove in, thwarting a spell aimed at them by Dumbledore. Percy, in a daring move, slid across the floor to grapple Dumbledore's leg. Malfoy charged, only to be effortlessly dispatched by the Centenarian. Step by step, John advanced towards a paralyzed Voldemort, who was reeling from the backlash. The thought that he could be outmaneuvered by a student yet to graduate was beyond Voldemort's comprehension. The paralysis, though brief, was a death sentence. The dread of impending death hammered at Voldemort's consciousness. "Tom, you've been defeated," John stated calmly, standing before him. For the third time. Voldemort's denial was immediate, unable to accept his defeat. John had strategically positioned himself, leveraging time, location, and the element of surprise. He had replaced the core of his wand with a feather from Fawkes, exploiting the shared core characteristic to ensnare Voldemort after exhausting Dumbledore. The duel had escalated with a series of calculated moves, culminating in the unexpected return of the soul. Black energy seeped from John's eyes, a sign of his immense exertion. One of the magical crystals he held dimmed, its energy spent. The Holy Grail exerted a formidable force, overwhelming those around it. Releasing the Grail, John pointed his wand at Voldemort, uttering an ancient incantation. The soul returns. White smoke billowed from Voldemort, his soul being forcibly extracted under the watchful eyes of all present. Harry, witnessing the scene, could hardly believe his eyes. Voldemort, seeing his own body from afar, was struck with disbelief. "No, it's impossible." But John gave him no quarter, approaching with determined steps. Despite his exhaustion, John's resolve was palpable. With a final command, the soul returns, he captured Voldemort's soul, transforming it into a silvery light that was absorbed by his wand. Voldemort's vision blurred as his soul was drawn into an unfamiliar realm. When his sight cleared, he found himself facing three figures, one of whom was Tom Riddle himself. John's task was clear, to deliver Voldemort's soul to death. Within the Holy Grail, the soul seemed to be refined, bringing John closer to achieving what many deemed impossible. The Death Eaters watched in despair as their master's soul was extracted. With Voldemort dealt with, John's focus shifted to resurrecting Heinrich, signaling a moment of calm after the storm. The fusion of forbidden powers within the Holy Grail opened up unprecedented possibilities. Drained yet determined, John contemplated his next move, the weight of his actions bearing down on him. The Death Eaters, their spirits crushed, could only watch as John, holding the Holy Grail, prepared to venture into the unknown. John held his wand, now only 2 steps away from completing his mysterious task. His gaze shifted to Harry, who was still restrained. Approaching, John raised his wand and reminded, "Remember what I told you, Harry. Don't forget to take your ticket." In that moment, Harry realized this was no dream. He stared at John, focusing on the wand in his hand, the very wand that had extracted Voldemort's soul just moments before. A chilling thought crossed his mind. Was John planning to extract his soul as well? Around them, the ghosts that had been lingering began to fade away, including a couple who seemed as if they wanted to intervene on Harry's behalf. Yet John remained unfazed, his wand inching closer to Harry with each passing second. With Voldemort's soul now gone, all that was left was his lifeless body. This scene, witnessed from various perspectives, painted a grim picture. John appeared poised to perform a similar act on Harry. In the midst of the chaos, Dumbledore repelled Malfoy with a powerful spell. Percy was knocked unconscious, and King found himself immobilized by a statue of a house elf conjured from thin air. Dumbledore, wielding his wand with both grace and ferocity, looked towards John with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "John, you're still walking down that dark path," he lamented, unable to hide his disappointment. Despite his reluctance, Dumbledore could not stand idly by and watch John attempt to extract Harry's soul. Unleashing the immense magical force contained within the Elder Wand, Dumbledore elevated his power to unprecedented levels. Aiming in John's direction, he released a dense beam of light that shattered the surrounding magical barriers. "Return of the soul," Dumbledore commanded, his voice echoing with authority and a hint of desperation. The spell, powered by the Elder Wand's enhanced capabilities, sought to intervene in John's ominous actions, offering a glimmer of hope in a seemingly hopeless situation. Chapter 378, I Manipulated Time. Harry felt as if his body had turned to stone, while his soul seemed to float away, detached and ethereal. It was an unsettling sensation, leaving his mind in a void of emptiness. As he looked down, he saw his physical body with eyes rolling back, yet he felt himself ascending. In this moment, his deepest, most guarded part of his soul was laid bare, yearning for freedom. His gaze was drawn irresistibly to Voldemort's abandoned body, a part of him itching to inhabit it, yet knowing there was no possibility for such an action. John, with a focused tap on Harry's crown, captured a mass of souls. In his right hand, it transformed into a soul scalpel, finer than a strand of hair. His eyes, sharp and determined, fixed on the scar on Harry's forehead. A hidden fragment of Voldemort resided there. John's task was clear, to perform a soul operation, mirroring the one done on Nagini, requiring him to control 100 soul scalpels simultaneously with utmost mental concentration. The stars, shield everything for me once more, John commanded, invoking the stars' magic. The dim stars flared to life, casting spells that formed a formidable barrier around him. The Holy Grail spilled out golden sand which, upon touching the ground, created a separate circle of time. With his wand, John drew a Mobius ring in the sand, invoking the Land of Eternity, a spell he had learned from Longchang. This spell used time itself to construct a realm of reincarnation, enveloping him within. Harry observed Dumbledore's lightning beam slowing down to an almost imperceptible speed, yet soon his attention was diverted. John's right hand, along with the 100 soul scalpels, extended towards Harry. Paralyzed, having returned from a spectral state, Harry could only watch as the silver threads approached him, invading his vision before piercing his eyeballs. The threads were so fine they were almost imperceptible, yet the terror of witnessing them penetrate his eyes was overwhelming, eliciting a cry from Harry. "Harry, I need you to remain calm. After all, we have an agreement," John remarked, glancing at his silver hand, where another supermagic crystal dimmed, leaving only 3. The Land of Eternity spell drained a vast amount of magical power every second, demanding John's undivided attention. He skillfully maneuvered 20 scalpels into Harry's eyes, slicing from within, and 50 more targeted the scar on his forehead. An additional 30 scalpels were positioned around Harry's heart as a precaution. Harry's screams echoed, sending shivers down the spines of those outside the magical barrier. Dumbledore, witnessing John's mastery over time manipulation, was astounded. That magic! It manipulates time itself, he realized, noting how any attack entering the barrier was significantly slowed. Even light and magic were impeded, yet John remained unaffected. Such a level of magic required specialization, even for someone of Dumbledore's caliber. "Damn it, Harry!" Sirius exclaimed, blocked from intervening. The situation escalated with the arrival of another member of the Order of the Phoenix, Moody. Concerned by Tonks's prolonged absence, Moody had come to investigate, only to find the elevator appearing newer with each passing moment. Upon reaching the top, the elevator looked as though it had just been installed, its golden gate shining brightly. Opening the gate with suspicion, Moody was met with the chaotic scene. Luna remained still, while Hermione struggled against her restraints. Legendary Aurors joined the fray, awakening everyone to action. Ron, without hesitation, and Ginny, after a brief pause, launched attacks, their wands aimed at Neville. Despite the strength of the Quunxing Club, they faced limitations. With 3 members down, they were outnumbered by the senior members of the Order of the Phoenix. Fleur had shattered the 7th amulet, causing the ring on her finger to emit a burst of red light. Tonks, having been disarmed, was quickly stunned by Moody, who had followed closely behind. Cedric engaged in a fierce battle with the professor, his spells clashing against Moody's experienced defenses. Moody's magical eye swiftly located Cedric's true form, eventually overpowering him. Of all the combatants, only Neville remained standing, sword in hand, facing off against everyone. "Neville, get out of the way," they urged, but Neville stood resolute, prepared to defend his position to the end. "Out of the way!" Ron shouted at Neville, his wand pointed directly at him. They shared the same dormitory, which made their current confrontation all the more intense. Moody attempted to mediate. "Son, it's best if you lower your weapon." Lupin added in a gentle tone, "Neville, your parents and I fought side by side. We would never harm you." Neville stood firm, like a lion protecting its cubs. His nose bled from a hit by an obstacle curse, but his eyes sparkled with an unprecedented determination. "I won't let you harm John," he declared, gripping his sword, ready to defend even without his wand. Ron, visibly frustrated, exclaimed, "What has John done to you? You're a Gryffindor, and your parents were with the Order of the Phoenix." "John is a kind man, my best friend," Neville retorted. "You don't understand anything." Sirius, unable to contain his anger and raising his wand, interjected, "I know enough. My godson is in danger because of this." Lupin tried to reason with Neville. "Think of your parents. They would be heartbroken over this." "They would be proud," Neville countered, sword in hand. "John risked his life to save my parents. He taught me strength and the true meaning of friendship." "Your parents?" Lupin was taken aback. He knew the Longbottoms had recovered, but was unaware of the details. They had all thought it was a miracle, yet here was Neville, attributing their recovery to John's bravery. Sirius, however, was not in the mood for discussions. Harry's screams pierced the air, prompting him to act. "Move aside," he demanded. "Only over my dead body," Neville stated, leaving no room for negotiation. Sirius, losing his patience, cast a sleeping curse at Neville, expecting him to dodge easily without his wand. But Neville, with his sword, proved to be a formidable opponent. Charging forward, he cut through spells like a fierce griffin in battle. The others joined in, attempting to subdue him, but Neville's swordplay was unmatched. He reached Sirius, momentarily choking him, before spinning around to deflect Ginny's spell and inadvertently striking Tonks. Lupin realized his underestimation of Neville. "Keep your distance," he commanded, recognizing the unique threat Neville posed. Despite Moody's magical eye tracking Neville's movements, the young wizard's speed and skill with the sword were overwhelming. Ron now understood Neville's earlier claim of defeating Malfoy in 10 minutes. His prowess was undeniable. However, the sword, a counterfeit of Marvolo's, eventually cracked under the strain of numerous spells. Neville, in a moment of distraction, nearly harmed Ginny but managed to pull back, his inherent kindness preventing him from injuring his friends. Yet, the sword broke, and Lupin's subsequent spell sent Neville flying. Sirius, though affected by the sleeping spell, managed to stand, driven by a strong will. Meanwhile, Dumbledore intervened, creating a gap in the magical field with a wave of his wand. Inside the field, John was deeply focused on controlling the soul scalpel, working to sever Harry's connection with Voldemort's soul fragment. Sweat dripped from his forehead, ignored as he concentrated. The scalpel had successfully cut through most of the connection, and as the third super magic crystal dimmed, John had completed 2/3 of the task. Harry's voice, altered by the state of his soul, echoed, "What?" John, momentarily distracted, quickly refocused. 30 scalpels surrounded Harry's heart, protecting it. Dumbledore's first attack dissipated against the magic field, while his second caused the surroundings to tremble. "The Elder Wand," Dumbledore murmured, preparing for another attempt, his powerful magic challenging the barriers protecting Harry and John from further harm. John's expression grew serious as he pondered the implications of Dumbledore wielding the Elder Wand. If Dumbledore's usual power level is a 7, then with the Elder Wand, he could easily surpass that, reaching level 8. Considering the highest level in the system is 7, Dumbledore's full release of power could very well affirm his status as the preeminent wizard, he mused. With only 1/10 of his strength remaining, John held his breath, confident yet cautious that his magical domain could withstand the attack. Dumbledore was preparing his third assault, its power accumulating to a crescendo. The air was filled with the ethereal song of a phoenix, a prelude to the impending storm. Suddenly, a massive bolt of red lightning descended from the heavens. In response, every member of the Order of the Phoenix sprang into action, casting spells in a desperate bid to counter the overwhelming force. "It's done," John declared, his eyes ablaze with determination. In a decisive moment, as the final strike was delivered, he unleashed a barrage of 100 scalpels that pierced Harry's body. From Harry's soul, a crimson entity was extracted, a fragment of his very essence. John extended his wand towards the spectral child, and upon contact, the magical field around them shattered. The Mobius ring, a symbol of infinite potential, exploded in a brilliant display of light and power. In that instant, 9 ancient iron armors enveloped John's body, each piece glowing with an otherworldly energy, readying him for the challenges that lay ahead. Chapter 379, I Ruined the Savior. The sky was ablaze with red lightning, its ferocity overwhelming. The first 2 armors shattered almost instantly, their remnants blocked by a third, which dissipated simultaneously. Lupin, Moody, Tonks, and Sirius had each expended their powers, while Ginny and Ron had used up 2 spells. In total, 9 talismans had been deployed, each serving its purpose. However, amidst the chaos, John found himself puzzled, his gaze falling upon his wand that had unexpectedly flown from his grasp. Slowly his eyes moved downward, settling on the vine-wood wand raised in the air. As his gaze followed the wand's trajectory, he was met with Hermione's face, etched with panic. The spell she cast was the 10th, a disarming spell so gentle, so entangled, and yet the weakest of them all. But it was this spell, falling upon John through the fading iron armor curses, that had an impact far more profound than the lightning itself. For a moment, John was frozen, disbelief and confusion clouding his eyes. The weakest spell had inflicted more pain than any lightning could. Seconds later, his reaction was explosive. He screamed towards the heavens, black magic radiating from his body. Without his wand to serve as a medium, the power of the Holy Grail nearly overwhelmed him. Colorful rays of light crashed down upon him, causing the dark magic to dissipate like smoke. An aura of terrifying coercion spread, sending everyone flying back, except for Dumbledore. Black smoke and magic swirled, consuming John, his eyes turning pitch black, his face marred with cracks resembling broken porcelain. Struggling, he uttered, "You made your choice, Hermione." Hermione, dazed, looked up to see John's transformed visage. The usually astute witch appeared confused, flustered, and helpless. John then turned his attention to Harry, who was undergoing a delicate soul surgery. Voldemort's soul fragment, entwined with Harry since he was a year old, was being extracted, leaving Harry in a weakened state. As John's hand enveloped Harry in black mist, he declared, "You and I have reached a deal." His gaze shifted to Dumbledore. "I ruined your savior, and this is my revenge." Dumbledore caught Harry with a shock-absorbing spell as John callously threw him aside. Sirius, rushing over, was stunned along with Dumbledore at the sight of Harry, particularly the absence of the scar on his forehead. The lightning bolt scar, a defining feature in countless Harry Potter stories, had vanished. By extracting Voldemort's soul, John had effectively erased the symbol of the savior Dumbledore had nurtured for over a decade. Surveying the arena, John waved his hand, dispelling the black mist and freeing Jin from the statue's suppression. The members of the Star Club rallied to John's side as he coldly addressed Dumbledore. "I told you, it wouldn't be as you expected." John had spent a year planning, undermining the notion of a savior as nothing more than a jest. His words left Dumbledore without a rebuttal. The student who once vowed to defeat Voldemort had fulfilled his promise, but at a great cost. John and Dumbledore exchanged cold stares, the old man seeing a reflection of himself in John's dark eyes. Voldemort was right. His mistrust had led to the downfall of John Wick, a true son of Hogwarts. "The wand is coming," John announced, extending his hand but received no response. A voice, old yet elegant, tinged with nostalgia, remarked, "Fantastic power, Albus." The speaker, a man as aged as Dumbledore, held John's wand. Despite his years, his presence was undeniable, standing beside Voldemort's body, as if he had always been there. "You are an amazing wizard, both in the past and now, and you will continue to be in the future," the old man said to John, as if they shared a long history. His eyes, captivated by the Holy Grail, admitted, "I must concede, your magical talent surpasses all." "The Holy Grail is coming," he continued, signaling a new chapter in this unforeseen saga. John pointed his wand skyward, and the Holy Grail, previously suspect, suspended in midair, began to plummet rapidly. Reacting with lightning speed, John cast a spell to capture the falling artifact. The Holy Grail, with its red magic stone embedded at the base of its cup, contained gold that transformed into a liquid with unfathomable magical power. This liquid, imbued with the essence of time and the Philosopher's Stone, had the power to rejuvenate. The old man's true interest lay not in the Holy Grail itself, but in the miraculous liquid it contained. Upon consuming a small amount, he shed his aged form, reverting to his appearance from the time of a great battle. His heterochromatic eyes, one eye markedly different from the other, gleamed with malevolence beneath his strikingly handsome features. Dumbledore, struggling with disbelief, managed to ask, "How could you, Gellert Grindelwald?" With a sinister smile, Grindelwald tilted his head. The emergence of a certain individual altered Tom's perspective. His insecurities led him to believe he needed an ally, and who better than a former Dark Lord, he mused, referring to himself. Grindelwald had vanished after the Great War of 1945. While Dumbledore was preoccupied with Azkaban, Voldemort sought him out in Nurmengard, where a pact was forged. Grindelwald had been biding his time, waiting for this moment. "Perhaps we should reminisce about old times, but now is hardly the moment," Grindelwald said, before swiftly disarming Dumbledore with an Expelliarmus. The wand flew from Dumbledore's grasp into Grindelwald's waiting hand. Grasping the wand, Grindelwald's expression remained impassive. Turning to John, he remarked, "You are a remarkable alchemist, John. It's unfortunate that your attachments render you vulnerable." Without a moment's hesitation, he snapped the red oak wand in two. John's face contorted in horror. "Stop!" he cried out, but it was too late. A powerful soul emerged from the broken wand, stronger than before, having absorbed several fragments of itself. Voldemort's soul, now seeking a new host, eyed Grindelwald momentarily before John, transformed into a shadowy mist, intercepted it with the sword of silver Wick. Unperturbed, Grindelwald aimed a destructive spell at the Holy Grail. John was torn between saving the Grail and confronting Voldemort. In that moment of indecision, he chose to save the Grail, realizing the soul within it was key. As he secured the artifact, Voldemort's soul returned to its body, reviving him more completely than ever before. His red vertical pupils gleamed with a familiar coldness. "A sensation I've long missed," Voldemort declared, his voice as chilling and high-pitched as ever. His gaze shifted from Grindelwald to the Holy Grail, eyes alight with greed. The scene was met with mixed reactions. The Death Eaters erupted in cheers, while the Order of the Phoenix looked on in despair. Voldemort was alive once more, and with Grindelwald by his side, the two Dark Lords presented an unprecedented threat. Dumbledore, now wielding Harry's wand, pondered their next move. John, guarding the Holy Grail, stood alongside Basil and Riddle, facing the formidable duo of Dark Lords. The air was thick with tension as the three groups faced off. Voldemort, reveling in the moment, announced with a cold pleasure, "Your end is nigh." Despite their alliance, it was clear that the two Dark Lords would not work together harmoniously for long. Yet in this moment, their temporary union served a singular purpose: to eliminate their greatest adversary. The standoff between the forces was palpable, each side calculating their next move in this high-stakes confrontation. The tension in the air thickened as the Death Eaters began to advance, their movements calculated and deliberate. Dumbledore swiftly alerted the others, preparing them for the imminent confrontation. The sound of the elevator, ringing persistently, heralded the arrival of more Death Eaters, a grim reminder of Kingsley's uncertain fate and Grindelwald's treachery. The full might of the Death Eaters was unleashed, a force so formidable that Voldemort, RT himself, could seize control of the Ministry of Magic in a single decisive move. "John?" Malfoy inquired, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Everything seemed so perfect," John murmured, more to himself than anyone else. As he lifted his gaze, sweeping it across the members of the Order of the Phoenix, the dark aura surrounding him began to wane. Confronted with the assembled might of his adversaries, he let out a sigh and, with a voice cold and resolute, declared, "Then we fight again." In the midst of this tense atmosphere, a blue flame flickered to life in the fireplace. Fleur, standing behind John, removed her necklace and handed it to him, a silent gesture of solidarity. "What makes you think you can stand against me?" John challenged, his voice echoing with authority, shattering any semblance of dominance the enemy thought they had. Tang Mi emerged from the fireplace first, stepping into the room with a bow directed towards John, a sign of deep respect. Following him, heavily armed security teams and dozens of aurors and strikers materialized from the flames, their sudden appearance taking Old Batty by surprise as he gasped at the sight. My lord, we are always at your service, Tang Mi declared with reverence. John raised his hands and tilted his head slightly, a smirk playing on his lips. Do you like the gift I've prepared for you? He asked, a hint of mischief in his tone. At his command, nearly 100 beams of light shot forth from behind him, raining down upon the Death Eaters with relentless fury. In this moment, the lines between Dark Lord and White Devil blurred, leaving no room for doubt. Here stood a king, unchallenged and indomitable. Chapter 380, The End of Everything. In an instant, most of the Death Eaters collapsed. John, with a calm demeanor, raised his right hand, summoning the silver Wick sword from the void. His gaze swept over the Death Eaters flanking Voldemort as he commanded, "Fix them." Suddenly, two voices among the Death Eaters shouted, "Avada Kedavra!" Two streaks of green light aimed at the opposing Dark Lords. Almost immediately, a wall of azure flames erupted, protecting them. Voldemort, caught off guard, narrowly avoided the attack, while a statue of a witch shielded Grindelwald. The sources of the attack took Voldemort by surprise. "It's you?" he exclaimed, disbelief evident in his voice. Lucius Malfoy and Rodolphus Lestrange had turned against him. Rodolphus, with a vacant expression and seemingly driven by a deep inner compulsion, charged towards the wall of fire, his wand emitting continuous bursts of green light. Voldemort, enraged, retaliated with a more potent killing curse, which claimed Rodolphus's life. Lucius, seizing the moment, incapacitated the surrounding Death Eaters. The tide had turned, signaling the end for Voldemort's reign within the Ministry of Magic. Grindelwald, with a meaningful smile, prepared a portkey with a simple portus, hinting at a future encounter with John. "We will see you again, Mr. Wick," he said before vanishing. Voldemort, now doubly betrayed by those he trusted, including Drogon or Lippy, and his loyal follower Barty Crouch Jr., was forced to retreat. With a powerful shattering curse, he broke through the Ministry's defenses and disappeared. The aftermath saw the two Dark Lords in flight and the Death Eaters in disarray. The Ministry of Magic eventually extinguished the remaining flames. Old Batty approached John, his tone laced with danger. "You lied to me, Silverhand," he accused, demanding an explanation for the unexpected turn of events. John, facing the captured Barty Jr., Lucius, and Drogon, calmly responded, "I promised to help you rebuild the Ministry of Magic." His assurance did little to appease Old Batty, who was concerned about the Ministry's financial woes. "As a friend, I have another gift for you," John added, turning to face Old Batty and placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "An honorable son." Old Batty, taken aback, looked towards his captured son, who showed no resistance. At that moment, the Ministry's fireplace roared to life as Rita and her team of reporters arrived. Lippy, revealing his true identity as an Auror, announced, "My real name is Lippy Kerber. I, along with my colleagues, was ordered to infiltrate the Death Eaters." He then helped Barty Jr. to his feet and declared, "My colleague, Barty Crouch Jr., has been undercover even longer." The revelation stunned the reporters, who were faced with nearly 30 captured Death Eaters, all of notable reputation. The mention of Barty Crouch Jr., the son of the new Minister of Magic, presumed dead for over a decade, electrified the crowd. He had not perished, but had been serving as a secret weapon against the Dark Lord, infiltrating the Death Eaters' ranks. Barty Crouch Sr. stood in stunned silence, grappling with the revelation that his son, Barty Jr., was being hailed as a hero. The idea that Minister Crouch had orchestrated a plan 15 years in advance to deal a significant blow to Voldemort upon his return was overwhelming. Barty Jr., long perceived as a villain, was now recognized for his sacrifices and contributions to the magical community. The Crouch family's legacy was forever altered, their name synonymous with heroism and strategic brilliance. The public, ever hungry for tales of heroism, eagerly embraced the narrative. The Ministry of Magic's decision to keep Voldemort's return under wraps was seen as a strategic move, part of a grand plan that had successfully neutralized the Death Eater threat. Lippy, with his gift for oration, captivated the press with his account of the events and his role in the grand scheme, effectively clearing Barty Jr.'s name and securing his own future prospects. Similarly, Lucius Malfoy was absolved of his Death Eater affiliations, elevating the Malfoy family's status in the magical community. As news of Voldemort's thwarted invasion and the capture of his followers spread, the magical society was abuzz with discussions and speculation. Headlines proclaimed the dramatic events of the night, from the Ministry's invasion to the damage inflicted upon the Department of Mysteries. Albus Dumbledore, despite the controversy, was spared from Azkaban due to his past contributions against Voldemort. Horace Slughorn's appointment as headmaster and the fluctuating fortunes of the Malfoy family were hot topics, as was the heroism of Barty Crouch Jr. Amidst the chaos, John and his friends gathered around the Holy Grail, their attention not on the rejuvenating fluid it contained, but on the resurrection stone John held. As he placed the stone over the Grail, a pattern of lines and circles emerged, forming a gateway. Through this mystical portal, they glimpsed their friend, Heinrich Edgar, asleep and seemingly at peace. This moment, steeped in magic and mystery, was a testament to the power of friendship and the enduring hope for resurrection and redemption. As the magical community reeled from the events of that fateful night, John and his friends were reminded of the personal stakes and the intimate battles that lay at the heart of their struggle against darkness. John's declaration was met with audible sighs of relief. However, Malfoy, ever the dissenter, grumbled, "Wake him up!" No sooner had the words left his mouth than Jin delivered a swift slap to the back of his head. Rubbing the sore spot, Malfoy shot a grin around, but the collective glare from the members of the Quunxing Club silenced him. With a mischievous smile, he conceded, "Fine, let him sleep a bit longer." Daphne was wrestling with a sense of guilt for not having taken part in the battle. "I'm alive because of you," John told her, gratitude evident in his voice. "Thank you, Daphne." At his words, a blush crept up to Daphne's ears, and she finally found it in herself to forgive her inaction. John's resurrection had caused quite the stir. That night, the entire school, teachers and students alike, was abuzz, working tirelessly to extinguish the fires that had erupted. And when John returned to school, it was to the wide-eyed astonishment of many. The Holy Grail, placed among the stars, was enveloped in starlight before it slowly vanished from sight. Retrieving a fragment of Heinrich's soul was undoubtedly a positive outcome. The semester came to a close, and none of them attended the final dinner party. But in the grand scheme of things, it mattered little. After all, the stars would continue to cast their light over the wizarding world. John, however, was charting a course markedly different from Dumbledore's. Clad in the locket, with a golden hourglass in one hand and a vial of expensively acquired blood in the other, a time converter, he was poised to embark on a new venture. At that moment, Basil, his faithful companion, flew over, a look of confusion briefly crossing its features before it returned to perch on John's arm. Standing atop the astronomy tower, John handed a black envelope to Basil. With a chuckle, he instructed, "Take this to the covered bridge. You know who it's for, Basil." The night air was thick with anticipation as Basil took flight. The envelope clutched in its beak, leaving John to watch from the tower, a plan set in motion that would soon unfold under the watchful eyes of the stars.